You stand for the pledge of allegiance. The flag.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel, or live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 or Verizon 29. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using the number 1-929-205-6099. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens may also join the Zoom webinar. Meetings are recorded and archived in Franklin TV and Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel, and shown repeatedly on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon 29. Zoom webinar details are 1-854-1753-3548. Any participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. Announcements from the chair. The meeting is being recorded by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon 29. This meeting may be recorded by others. Upcoming town-sponsored events. The next town council office hours will be held December 18th at 8:30 a.m. at the Franklin Senior Center. Franklin Historical Museum and Historical Commission has invited you to the grand opening of their new exhibition entitled The Franklin Miniature Historical Museum. It will be shown on display for the whole month of December and January. The second annual Wreath of Franklin is taking place on December 13th from 11 to 4 p.m. Over 20 pop-up vendors will be at the Black Box, and several stores downtown will participate. That's pretty good. I also have to wish Council Morangello a happy birthday. Today's his birthday. So happy birthday. Didn't want to dash it.
We have a video issue.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, is there a video problem with the?
Franklin TV is working on it right now.
Okay.
Okay. Citizens' comments. Citizens are welcome to express their view for up to 3 minutes on a matter that is not on the agenda. Compliance with Chapter 38, Section 20, the open meeting law, the council cannot engage in a dialogue or comment on a matter raised during citizens' comment. The council may ask the town administrator to review the matter. Nothing herein shall prevent the town administrator from correcting a misstatement of fact. We have no approval of minutes. We have a proclamation recognition. Amy.
No citizens comments.
Yeah. Do we have any citizen comments?
Mine's a cute little quick one, I promise. Hi, everyone.
I've been working all night, guys, so if you had me, I've been at the airport since 6 o'clock yesterday. So.
Oh, that's something exciting for you then. Callie Keating, 26 Schofield Drive, but today
Okay.
coming from 118 Main Street. I work at the library, and I just wanted to throw in another quick little plug for our Pancakes and Pajamas, which is next Saturday, December 13th at 10:30. It is, I think, like our 8th or 9th annual, and we have Mr. Jamie Barrett performing live music and an army of teen volunteers serving pancakes. So come in your jammies. meet some citizens and eat some pancakes. Thank you.
All right, this is
Scott
name,
Mason, 22 Eisenhower Drive.
Yeah.
You stole some of my thunder, Mr. Chairman.
No,
I didn't
sorry about
realize you
that,
were gonna-
brother.
I didn't realize you were going to read the announcements, but I just want to reiterate, and those of you on the council have gotten invitations in front of you, but just want to invite all the council members, everyone in the chamber, and everyone in TV land, although I guess we're having a TV problem at the moment. But the Franklin Historical Commission will be beginning its exhibit, Franklin in Miniature 1932, this Saturday, and the exhibit runs this Saturday through February 1st. The museum is open Saturdays 10 to 1, Sundays 1 to 4. The exhibit covers 3 dioramas that have been built over the last 3.5 years that capture in miniature the railroad in Franklin in 1932 and have over 40 structures on them that have been built to precise replication in miniature down to about 1 millimeter in accuracy. So I hope all of you can attend on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and I hope folks can stop by at some point in the next 2 months and see the exhibit. Thank you.
Information. I just wanted to make sure the minutes are being recorded. If someone's recording the minutes, if they're not being recorded from the TV station. Good.
Zoom?
The Zoom will have an audio recording at the very least, even if there's issues with the video.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hello, I am not a citizen, but I am your treasure collector. My name is Anne Marie Duggan, and I just want to take this opportunity to notify the taxpayers that effective January 1st, the mailing address for our payment processing center, also known as our lockbox, will be changing. This address is used for those who generate their payments through their personal online banking. So if you use this service at your bank, we ask that you please update the town of Franklin's mailing address to this. I have the address, but notices will be, and reminders will be mailed with the upcoming real estate, utility, and motor vehicle bills. And we will also put it on our webpage and also have reminders sent through our office, dropping off payments and such. I will read the address. It's going to be the town of Franklin, P.O. Box 848220, Boston, Mass. 02284. -8220. We do ask that the 4-digit zip code extension be included. If a payment is mailed to the current lockbox, it's okay. That mail will be forwarded to the processing center, and that forwarding will be effective for 6 months. And then lastly, as a reminder, there are other payment options, just to make sure people know. You can pay online through Unipay. There is a secured lockbox at the front of the building, as well as our drive-through and our counter. Please come in and visit if you'd like. During business hours, which is Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 8 to 4, Wednesday, 8 to 6, and Friday, 8 to 1. If you do have questions, please call the office, 508-520-4950. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Corey Shea. How are you all doing? I work for the town of Franklin, and I just want to give another little plug for what Bobby already talked about. On December 13th, we have our second A Wreath of Franklin, and it's going to be so much fun. As he said, the Black Box has over 20 pop-up vendors, and also a lot of our stores downtown are having live music and performances and a lot of way to engage with one another. So I hope you all come out. And then also at 11 a.m. is when the festivities officially kick off. And we have a giant bell, which our town councilors will be ringing in to kick off the festivities. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Hope to see you all out there.
Kim Mitchell, 4 Briarwood Road. You know, it's really cold out there.
Yeah, it is.
Just wanted to remind everyone that the community coat drive is ending this Saturday. We'll probably will leave the boxes out till Monday, but you can drop off any gently used clean coats or new coats at either New England Chapel, Franklin United Methodist Church, the police station, the fire station, or the Hockomock YMCA. We have been picking up a ton of coats, but we can always use a few more. And building on what Corey was saying, the winter coat giveaway is actually on the same day as the wreath. It's going to be, we're actually preceding it. So it's December the 13th from 9 to 12 at the community closet at the Franklin United Methodist Church. And so anyone can come and get a coat for themselves, their children, etc., so that we can try and keep them all warm this winter. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Amaral, Franklin Senior Center. Just two announcements to save you, Bobby, and I also forgot to send them in earlier this week. Our Winter Wonderland is next week. I can't believe it's already here. I think this is now our 4th annual. So I just wanted to tell everyone that will take place next Thursday, December 11th from 4:30 to 7 at the Senior Center. We do it a little bit better and different every year. So if you've come before, come again. If you've never come, please come check it out. It is for all ages, so it is open to the entire public. Our van will be running if you need a ride. There'll be live entertainment with Elvis, the Franklin Fire Department Touch-a-Truck, some food, cookies, cocoa. This year we'll have a character artist, face painting, kids craft, photo booth, and a huge raffle that's done by our Friends of Franklin Elders, which serves as a fundraiser for the Senior Center. And just a huge shout out to our Friends of Franklin Elders. They are our nonprofit arm that raises money to help us continue our programs. And then the second one is our senior tax work-off is now open and taking applications. Huge thank you to this council for everyone who made that possible. It's super popular. So that opened on Monday, and just for folks who don't know, this is a program that allows eligible Franklin homeowners to earn up to $1,500 off their property taxes. There are some caveats to that. The full packet is either printed at the Senior Center or on our website at the franklinma.gov. They're able to do this by doing 100 hours of service in a town department. For this, there's 2 programs. I think Shannon's going to mention hers. For the senior tax work-off, you have to be 60 or older. And so far, 73 people have signed up since Monday. So that's awesome. We have 27 slots left. I have a lot of people who nudge my arm and say, I do this every year. I'll get a spot, right? The answer is no. It is first come, first serve. First 100 people, and then we start a wait list. So if you're hearing this and you haven't signed up yet, try and get in this week if you can, because it's filling fast. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. Councilor DeLorco and the rest of the town council, I'd like to talk to you about a couple of bills that are in the Massachusetts legislature that have to do with public utilities and giving municipalities the opportunity to claw back a little bit of power from the public utilities and save money for the town at the same time. So I'm going to send you information. Each of you will get an email from me within the next few days. But it's House Bill number 3446, Senate 2248. It's called the Municipal Voices Bill. That's the first of the 2 bills I want to talk to you about today. The bill will require gas companies to inform municipalities when they're going to rip up streets to work on the utilities. If no agreement can be reached between town and utility, then they will be entitled, the town will be entitled to a DPU hearing on the topic. It also will require that utilities provide a 4-year plan for pipes in the streets of the municipality, for Franklin, for example, and that they must evaluate alternatives to gas, allowing a plan for heat pumps. The second of the bills is called the Tactical Transition Bill. It's a House Bill 3539, Senate 2249. The full name is Tactical Transition to Affordable Clean Thermal Energy. It actually allows towns to establish clean energy utilities within the town that will provide the community access to low-cost solar and wind energy. So, for example, if we were to put a lot of solar collectors on top of a school, for example, the public utility decides when and if to give those credits back. This bill would basically empower the municipality, the town of Franklin in our case, to decide how and when to use that energy that's generated by our own utilities. So it also will require gas companies to implement a 25-year plan to help the state transition from gas to non-emitting energy sources. So as I said, I'm going to send you information on both of these bills. My ask from you will be to support them and maybe have a vote at an upcoming meeting so that you could send a letter of support of these bills like other municipalities already have to the legislature. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Mark.
Hello, Shannon Nisbet, Director of Veteran Services. We're here to talk about our Veterans Tax Work-Off Program briefly. It is almost identical in structure to the Senior Tax Work-Off Program. The only difference is you qualify for it by being a veteran or surviving spouse of a veteran. You do have to meet the state definition of a veteran, and our application forms are all online on our website. The program is managed by my colleague, Deborah Martin. If you have any questions or want to apply, just give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Young, 5 Berkeley Drive. I come before the council tonight hoping that you'll consider making a requirement of all town departments who submit and send bills to residents, that those bills must be fully transparent and itemized. This comes about with my recent receiving of my real estate tax bill. I've had the opportunity to talk to most of you. That tax bill is not just on residential taxes. That tax bill includes a lot of other components. I understand in talking to one of the counselors that used to be itemized years ago and now it's not. It just so happens I get my utility bill today, water consumption, sewer usage, trash, stormwater, and then a grid at the bottom that tells you what it is. We should do the same thing for our real estate. I received an email that says that the first conversation was that debt exclusion and a 2.5% increase is included in that bill. Line item it so we know what's in our tax bill. Also, it would be beneficial, especially when you're looking for overrides, that we see on that line item when that exclusion expires. People are going to get money back, maybe a little bit more in their pocket that they can afford an override. This sentence, the debt exclusion is not calculated as a percentage of each property. Instead, every parcel pays its proportional share of the town's total tax levy, which includes the base levy, the 2.5% increase, new growth, and all approved debt expenses. I need to see that. I requested now for weeks. The formula, the components that are in it, haven't seen anything. I think we as residents have the right for transparency, so we know what we're paying and where that money is going. You know, none of us are going to go and get our oil change done and tell them we got a squeak in a tire, and we go to pick it up and it says oil change $1,200. We're going to ask what that is. Every bill that we receive personally, I'll guarantee you, is itemized. Cell phone bills, water bills, electric bills. Why is our real estate tax bill not? So I hope that you will all put it under consideration to require not just that, but let's become more transparent as a community. I've lived here for 34 years, first time I've come here. I think it's time that we open this up and take small steps so the residents can see where that money is going and how it's being applied. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Steve Sherlock, 13 Magnolia Drive, volunteer for as Community Information Director for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio. So the question earlier for background, since most of you knew, when I'm here, there is a backup audio recording. Generally, the TV recording, and I don't want to disturb Chris because he's working it, starts on Zoom, goes to Comcast, goes to Verizon, goes to YouTube. It is automatically recorded by Zoom, as has been mentioned, both video and audio. There's a backup video that they can then reload for replay later. Generally, that's always the case. Generally, that happens. I don't know the specific circumstances tonight because he's got his head down and he's busy. But the other piece is I do have an audio recording that is being made starting and will end with the meeting appropriately. That has been used in prior sessions to cover for gaps in the official audio recording. So just for information, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, we don't have Zoom, right? Do we have Zoom?
They just can hear us. They can't
No one
see.
with, no one with any.
Nobody has their hands up. Okay. All right, moving on.
Oh, someone does.
Oh,
Never mind.
no, yes. no.
They did.
Wait,
They
you have
did.
your hand up momentarily.
Testing. No approval of minutes, proclamations and recognition. We have one. Council Comey, a legend.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Corey, can you come up here and join me? And Amy and Jenna, you're gonna come up too? Okay. I've invited Corey Shea, our Director of Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy, to join me because this is a tremendous honor to recognize a friend and someone who does so much for the people of Franklin. For those of you that don't know, Amy Galosi owns Creative Corner Art Studio here in town, but she's been in business for 20 years. She's been in different spots. She calls Franklin her home. The reason why we're recognizing it's not just the grand opening of her spot downtown, which I encourage everyone to go visit, being in business for 20 years, but this lady doesn't say no to anybody that comes to her that needs help. Every parent that I know of that's ever come to her looking for assistance for one of her programs, she says, we'll find a way. Whether that's for a pottery class, an art class, when she ran her after school program, maybe it was a kid that was on the spectrum that just needed a little extra help. We need more people like Amy that are going to look to what's needed for the kids and the families of our town and not just the bottom line. So it is my honor, proclamation recognizing Creative Corner Art Studio in celebration of your grand opening at your downtown location. Whereas the Creative Corner Art Studio celebrates its grand opening at its new location, 21 East Central Street in Franklin. Upcoming on December 12th will be a celebration that everyone's welcome to attend. Whereas owner Amy Galosi has been in business for 20 years, serving kids across Metro West Massachusetts, providing them with nurturing environments to express themselves through the arts. And whereas the Franklin Town Council is proud to recognize the grand opening of Creative Corner Art Studio and congratulate Amy on achieving this milestone of 20 successful years servicing the artistic needs of our community. Now therefore be it known that the Town Council of the Town of Franklin hereby recognizes Creative Corner Art Studio in celebration of your grand opening and congratulate its owner and founder, Amy Galosi, on 20 and hopefully many more successful years of business. It is signed by Robert DeLorco, our chairman, and presented by myself today, December 3rd. So congratulations.
Hi, for this. And I've been blessed to be a part of this community now for 6 years. I lived in Needham before. That's how Ted and I met, and I see a lot of great things happening, and I'm just very humble and blessed to be able to do what I do. And hi, please come visit.
Yeah.
Wait, oh, sorry. Photo off. Oh, there. 1, 2, 3. Gorgeous. Perfect. Thank you.
Moving on. Appointments, we have one. Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee. Clerk will read the appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The town administrator has appointed Maureen Brennan to serve on the Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee with a term to expire June 30th, 2029. The motion is to ratify the appointment by the town administrator of Maureen Brennan to serve as a member of Franklin's 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee with a term to expire on June 30th, 2029.
Motion, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. The motion and a second. Are the candidates here by any
No.
chance?
Through Mr. Chairman, the Maureen is to replace Mike Carroll, who unfortunately doesn't live in town, but she's another member of the Dean Bank community and does live in town. So Dean Bank, oh, she's here.
There you
I
go.
wasn't sure if you showed up or it's okay, Maureen. No, that was it. Was
No,
just
I
to make
just-
sure that people knew that that was the swap. And then the official charge had that y'all are gonna ratify the chair, vice chair, clerk, and treasurer. And they had their first kickoff meeting. It's 833 days away from your town birthday, 250th anniversary. And those are the folks that were voted on by the committee and recommended to the council. Thank you.
All right, I'll go to the council. Is there any councilors?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. We'll take a vote to ratify the Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
Motion passed.
9-0, sir.
Thank you for stepping up there. I always say, the volunteer committee, you got a lot of work ahead of you, so good luck. So we're supposed to have a public hearing, but on this, it says it's 7 PM, so one more. We didn't ratify that?
No, we only approved Maureen Brennan. Now we need to ratify that.
Read the ratification.
Okay. Sorry.
This is the motion to ratify nomination of officers.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't actually have. Yep. Okay, Mr. Chairman, this next one is the Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee ratifying their officers. On November 20th, 2025, the Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee voted unanimously to nominate the following officers of their committee. Chair Jason Joyce, Vice Chair Robert Brown, Clerk Alan Earls, and Treasurer Charlene Belcher. So this motion is to ratify the nomination of these officers by and for the Franklin 250th Anniversary Celebration Committee as stated above.
Have a motion to have a second?
Second.
Go to the council. Any discussion? No discussion? I'll take a vote on the ratification. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for stepping up. No license transactions. We're gonna go to presentation and discussion, Jamie,
Yes, sure.
5-year fiscal forecast. The public hearing for the FY 26 tax hearing will be at 7 o'clock. It's posted on here at 7. I know legally it was at 6, but in case people want to come late, we're gonna hold off.
All right, so through you, Mr. Chairman, these are the, so as requested, by I think a couple members, the recent meetings. I'm not gonna go through the whole slideshow that was included in the packet that's been presented on twice, but I'm gonna go through the fiscal forecast and some of the assumptions and obviously leave time for questions. Let's get to the slide here. All right, so if folks look up at the screen. A little hard to see, but people can also look in the packets. I think Zoom usually has it up as well. But it was in the packet. And if you go to slide 9 of 23, or if you go to the forecast links. So basically what we did was this past year, after the override failure in June, and after the final budget was approved in June, the previous council also executed, as a school committee, they executed all the collective bargaining agreements for our town's major unions. That is a really big deal. Because 3 years ago, when we did the collective bargaining agreements in 2022, we were also dealing with post-pandemic realities that were hard to rationalize with. This is by far the best fiscal forecast that we've had as a community in the last 5 or 6 years since the pandemic. So this is actually a really good cost out. These assumptions in here are very good. They're very strong. They're going to change, but this is probably the best outlook we've had into the town's structural budget deficit problem in the last 5 or 6 years. It's a little hard to see, but if you look up in the left-hand column, you'll see in the immediate left, you got FY26. And then for folks looking up here, you got FY27, 28, 29, 30, and 31. And actually, Julie, do you have that pointer? So if you follow up with FY27 and you go up onto the control sheet, this is our revenue chart. So this is just a one-page piece. This is in every budget. It's in every voting document. And you'll notice up in the top, you have prior year tax levy plus 2.5. So you'll see in these two corners right here, you have FY27 projected, which is 99, just under 100 million. And we assume right now 1.1 million in new growth. But we obviously know new growth didn't come in this year at 1.1 million. We assume that already. So at some point, once we get through the tax rate hearing tonight and we go in prospectus look to next year, we'll evaluate that number. That number could certainly be lower than it is now. In fact, it probably is a good idea to lower that number. But again, the fiscal forecast, so folks understand, is not a document that's ironclad in stone. This is going to ebb and flow between now and when you get to May. It's going to constantly change a little bit. But right now, for the assumptions, we have 1.1 million. So you just add up that 99 million, the 1.1, and you get a tax levy of 100,996 million. You take that 100 million and you add 2.5% of it next year, and that's how you go through the 2.5 levy. It's pretty actual when you think of it in a very basic way. It's actually pretty easy to calculate. The hardest part is dealing with what the Board of Assessors deal with, which is dealing with new growth. And if you look at the new growth numbers that I put, I think in the packet or in some documents recently, in 2020, our new growth was at 1.8 million. That was a record high. So we've lost $1 million in tax levy capacity over the last 5 or 6 years. That's a lot. That's a lot. And we'll obviously have to see what goes on for FY 28, 29 in the future, but there's really no way we can look out now, given the economic factors going across the world and the country. We can't really predict. The big issue there is going to be interest rates in the spring. The big reason why new growth has come down, as I've said, is mainly to deal with a lot of residences are not doing improvements, new kitchens, additions, pools, improvements. And so therefore those properties are staying stagnantly valued. And therefore we're not able to bring in that number of a year. New growth, by the way, is an assumption we use every year as a base. So if you want to have that number go up, we need a better commercial environment. We need a better lending environment. We need a better financial environment. And we need residents to go out and spend more money to do additions and property improvements. But I think we all understand what the constraints are with affordability from a lot of residents. And obviously, in the last couple of years, those numbers have dropped. So then you add in the second column here, which is debt exclusions, which I think Mr. Young talked about a little while ago. We have outlined this for him, and we have talked to Brian about how all of this gets done. I know he's looking for a little more detail, and we'll follow up with him. But debt exclusions, and I apologize if the counselors know this information, but I think part of this is also about hopefully reaching people that are watching at home. The debt exclusions are votes, like the high school, like Tri-County, which are really the only two left. They are votes at the ballot, and you raise the tax to pay that debt exclusion bond over a period of time, usually 20, 30, or 40 years. The high school is a 40-year, Tri-County is a 30-year. But a lot of times in the past, we've done 20 years when finances were better, when financial models were better. And you can see right here in the schedule right across of our payments. And that is actually by law added to the tax levy. So when folks say we have a 101 million tax levy, That's probably true because that's actually more discretionary. But technically with DOR, we have to report a 105.6 million tax levy because of the debt exclusions. And unfortunately, while some of this may be hard to follow, this is the way we have to present it and we have to do it. And I hope that through many iterations of this, people will understand that all of this is baked in state law. And so we're just following state law on these things. We're not doing it to confuse people or make it harder, but we do it because it's the law. So then you look down below here, and the next category of our revenue sheet is state aid. So what we did in the financial model is we assumed 1% growth of state aid for the next 5 years. I think last year was maybe 1.5%. We all know the state budget is going to get much more difficult. There will be a campaign shortly on dealing with unrestricted general government aid as a legislative priority for the Mass Municipal Association this year. But generally right now, we're assuming across the board for the next 5 years, a 1% from previous fiscal year, a 1% growth in state aid. If that goes up, fantastic. We will know a lot at the end of January when Governor Healy proposes her budget. If she proposes a budget at 2% state aid, we will change that number. And then we will use the governor's number throughout the year. I want to caution everybody that these last 2 budget years, we used the Senate local aid numbers to do our final budget. And then when the legislature passed their final budget, they cut that local aid. So it was less than what by August or July or September, whenever the state gets done with their budget. We don't have to be this way, but I think whatever the governor proposes in her budget this year is probably a smart idea to use that as the baseline number in the budget, because we don't know what the House, Senate, Conference Committee or other things are going to do later in the year. In my 28 years doing this, most of the time, if not every year, other than the last couple, the legislature and governor always go with whatever's the highest number. But the last 2 years, because of charter school reimbursements and other parts of the funding formula, that was not the case for Franklin. So I think moving forward this year, we're probably going to want to take the governor's number in January and use that throughout the year. But just for modeling purposes, a 1% growth in state aid for a town of our size, given the state law around the formula with Chapter 70, the Student Opportunity Act, charter school reimbursements, and all the different factors, that's likely the best assumption we can use at this time. And so you can see on here, Chapter 70 school aid, charter school reimbursements, it's all broken out. One other thing I'll mention is this is what's called a cherry sheet on state aid. We get this from the state, we get it from DOR, we get it when the governor does one, the House, the Senate, Conference Committee, and then Evan just takes those numbers and plunks them right into the budget. So there's nothing else that goes on. That's pretty much what every city or town does at each iteration of the budget process for the state. Then you go down here to other revenues. That is our local receipts. Those are the locally generated revenues by the municipal staff. That is the equivalent of revolving funds for the schools. As I've said many times before, the schools committee has jurisdiction over the revolving funds of the school department. The council does not. However, with local receipts, that is the discretion of the expenditure of the council. What we have done in the past, up until about 2 years ago, is we generally had a pretty conservative local receipts number. One, because of the pandemic, but also two, we like to be conservative because any money that we did not budget for goes into free cash. And when that gets certified as free cash, that goes into our capital program, which are facilities, police gear, fire gear, curriculum, sped vans, all the other stuff that you guys will see in January as part of the capital program. But over the last couple of years with the budget pressures, we've gone to a more moderate projection system. And we look at the past couple of years receipts, we look at the economy coming up. Is things going to be strong? Are you going to be able to maintain these? Are there any bubbles in the economy coming? The World Cup is a factor, right? Because at the end of this fiscal year, we should see some of those tourism dollars around town and hotel and meals, plus in the early part of Q1 of next fiscal year. But there's nothing right now that we see in motor vehicle excise, hotel purchasing, meals taxes, cannabis. There's nothing in our chart, and I did include it in the packet from our Q1 review of financials. We will look at this again at the Finance Committee in January, and we'll look at Q2 of this year.
and we'll see where we're at in year-to-date spending, and we'll see where we're at with revenue projection. As long as we're on target, we plan to propose a budget with local receipts being at the number that's in this budget. If it can go up, great, but I wouldn't count on that. You can only go up in local receipts from one year to the next, a certain percentage under state law, so there's only so much bandwidth we have. In other words, I can't just assume that's going to be 18 million, right? I can't make a reckless number and make it up. The state will come down on us as they should. So there are some checks and balances in the system on local receipts. As you know, call volume is still very high in the fire department, so those revenues are coming in. Recreation programs are at an all-time high. So the town clerk is bringing in well over $100,000 of revenue from the various services in her office. So just about every department in the entire municipal building is bringing in more revenues than we did last year. Liquor licenses, a whole variety of fees and services that we do. And don't ever forget that Gus Brown is your best friend as the building commissioner in this area, because him and his staff bring in an overwhelming majority of money into that account, as well as free cash due to building permits and things of that sort. So, so that's local receipts. And then other available funds is, so net stabilization, other transfers. If you had gone back to FY24, you would see in there $3 million, but that's fallen off the chart because we're looking forward. So you would put in any one-time monies would go into that net budget stabilization, other transfers. As Councilor DeLorco remembers, in 2018 and 19, we used all of the town's rainy day budget stabilization money to fund the school budget gap in both of those years. And those numbers, if you went back to those years, you would see those amount of monies in that line item. The enterprise fund indirects, that's for benefits from our water, sewer, trash accounts. By law, we have to take those monies out, but because we appropriate healthcare out of the general municipal budget, we offset those costs by bringing those money in from the indirects. So then really at the end of the day, you then have total revenues and other funds. So in FY27, we're roughly looking at a budget projection of about 158 million in revenue if all of those assumptions were accurate or pretty much on target within striking distance. However, there's another part of the formula that has the news that usually people aren't happier with, which is the assessments and other votes. So the assessments and other votes on this sheet right here are essentially for state aid deductions off of our cherry sheets. So the biggest one that people always talk about, so you got 539,000 in school choice assessment. That's basically students that are from Franklin going to other schools. So if a student from Franklin went to Bellingham High or went to Medway or went to another town, we have to pay a percentage of that money out to those districts for school choice. That's the same thing with the charter school assessment right here. So you got state assessments and county assessments. Oftentimes those are mandatory things to Norfolk County. We actually still are in a county form of government in Norfolk County. Middlesex doesn't have a county. You know, there's a whole bunch of other counties that have been essentially taken off the books. But we still pay Norfolk County because we're still a county form of government. We're still within Norfolk County, which is a county form of government. So the charter school assessment is really the biggest piece of all of this. If you went back to when I think 10 years ago when Councilor DeLorco, when I first got here, that number was like maybe 3 million. So what happened was when the charter school got approved for an additional 300 seats or whatever it was, essentially, because a lot of kids are going from Franklin schools to the charter school, we have to pay that tuition to the charter school account. So what you've seen here is in a 10-year trajectory, you've seen that account more than almost basically double. And so as those charter school seats became available, that was money lost from the town and the Franklin Public Schools essentially to the charter school. And this is actually something someday we may want to unpackage, not tonight. But when the charter school approval went through, I think back in 2014 or 13-14, there was no objection from the town here, the town of Franklin. That was a huge mistake. Okay, because it essentially gave the Board of Education the ability to essentially rubber stamp without any opposition to put in their charter that the Benjamin Franklin Charter School could go up to the certain amount of seats that they had. And there's no cap on the amount of Franklin students or anywhere in that district. The Benjamin Franklin Charter School did expand their district by 7 or 8 towns. I can't remember the exact amount, but it did expand its geographical presence quite a bit. And at the time, I think the general thought is that a lot of those students that would go to the charter school were from other communities. And that has definitely also been the case. There are a lot of other students from that larger geographical area. But one of the big mistakes that was made was not opposing the expansion of the charter school. And this is exactly why right there. Because now for a lot of the comments that we've heard from a lot of members of the public, specifically I think around foreign language, I think around arts education, and a variety of other things, we hear about the competitive disadvantage between the charter school and the Franklin Public Schools around some of those areas, correct? And so I think what you're seeing there is a lot of money that could have stayed in Franklin's coffers. Maybe not all of it, because the state would have approved the charter anyways. But I know my predecessor was very boisterous about this for many, many years, and I know the superintendent was for many years too. But now you're seeing that money go to that charter school. So when you go up to the top and you see 30.7 million in Chapter 70 aid for the schools, you cannot take 30.7 million and say the schools should get all that money. Because down here, there's an assessment of almost 7 million via student choice and the charter school assessment, less some of the other things. So what we do is we just plug in the numbers and look at the aggregate budget. And so you go down there and you look at, instead of 158.6 million budget in FY27, you're looking at 152.1 or so million budget. Again, those are projections. And so when you look at the expenditure sheet, which we can look through if folks want, on the next slides, you're looking at projecting of a deficit of 1.9 million going into FY27. And that assumes all of these other expenses over here that I've put on the right side. Healthcare, 14%, Norfolk pension, 8%, account 300, 3.8%. Assumes no new borrowing from Remington Jefferson Horace Mann. This does include the teacher's contract as well as the other collective bargaining contracts as well. So before I move on to the expenditure sheets, and I will get to, I know everybody got an email today about some pointers around the town growth of 4.8%. In the schools, if you take out healthcare, they would be down to like 2.6 or 7, which is true. But I do want to make sure the 4.8% is clearly explained on the next expenditure piece, because when you read that, 4.8% is very misleading. And I want to make sure that it's very clear publicly to all of you and everybody watching at home what those numbers from those folks that emailed meant. But before I go to the expenditures, I think it's a good time to pause to see if there's any questions about the revenues.
Yeah, so I just had a couple of questions. Through the chair. This is just on the total assessments and other votes. Can you say what percentage of that is the charter school and what percentage is other than the charter school? Of that 8 million number?
75-80% roughly.
And then my other question for you is, and you may not know the answer to this, does the charter school have a preference to Franklin residents?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a preference. I think generally with regional schools like that, where the VOC, it's about geography and it's about, parental choice. And I think it's generally about if you live 4 towns away and it's a 40-minute commute to drop off kids every day, maybe that's not advantageous, right? But because Benjamin Franklin was one of the first 4 charter schools set up in Massachusetts history, 1995 was one of the first 4. They were the next lane up to ask for an expansion. So that happened maybe in 2013, 14, 15. But the students didn't start going because they constructed the new building. Obviously, they moved from the building across from St. Mary's, and they built the new structure over at 100 Financial over off of Washington Street. So it took a few years, and I don't quote me, but I think they opened in 2018, and they started accepting new students. And if you went back and looked at the trajectory over time, you can see the amount of money that's gone to the charter school. And I just want to, this wasn't part of your question, Councilor Grella, but I just want to make sure it's clear. This is not me editorializing about the educational quality of the charter school or pointing fingers at the charter school. This is not at all their responsibility to deal with any of this. This was the town of Franklin's responsibility to go to the Board of Education at public meetings and have a voice where maybe in the charter, instead of allowing as many as possible, maybe they could have put in a cap and said you can only have certain amount of kids from Franklin. But when you don't go to the meetings and you don't have a voice and you don't opine and you don't object, you don't create any leverage for yourself to work with. And I think I've said this before, so this is not new.
No,
I think that was a huge mistake. My predecessor was much louder about this
He
than I was.
way louder than you.
He was a lot louder. I know, Jeff. So this was one of those data points I would look back in the last 15 or 20 years and say, if you're looking for where a lot of art education went, there it is. So when people say we've lost things in Franklin, that's true. But there's a bit of an area that could have been done. So I hope that answers your questions, Councilor Paul.
Anything else? From Jane?
Just one question for right now. I'm sure I'll come up with more. When the charters, just out of curiosity, and this is basically because I don't know, we pay into the charter school basically is what you're saying.
These are all state, yes.
From the state aid.
Yeah.
From the state aid, that's correct.
Do the other towns that utilize the charter school also have to contribute to it? So it works like a vocational?
It's exactly like a vocational. This was part of ed reform in 1993. So chapter 70 and charter schools were created in the same law. And that was actually the compromise, was this major infusion of chapter 70 aid, right, which was for public schools, which was pretty much the greatest thing that's ever happened to public schools. I mean, that's been unbelievable, tens of billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars to public education. But it was also about Governor Weld at the time, right, was fighting for alternative educational models, namely charter schools. So that funding formula, every single town is susceptible to that. Every town in the Benjamin Franklin district has the same proportion of money that goes to it. It's based on their per pupil cost. And so it works exactly the same in every community as it does here.
So if another town's using the charter school and their per pupil cost is more or less than ours, they're gonna pay more or less than we
Correct.
go in.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey, is that you?
Yep.
You're fine, Jane?
Mhm.
Max?
Just a quick question or comment rather. The Horace Mann School, it looks like it's coming off of the debt exclusion.
Yep.
Does that mean that people's tax bills won't rise as fast this year as it has the previous year?
Unbelievable question.
Just for this.
Yes,
Okay.
but I highly doubt, yes. And I think Councilor Blank pointed this out at the last meeting, or Councilor Moore, somebody about the Tri-County
Coming on.
number was lower because the interest rate they got was better, right? So, but I don't know if people will feel the relief. But I applaud the question. We've talked about this at all of our budget meetings the last couple of years. If you went back 5 years to 2020, not only would you see Horace Mann on there, you'd also see Keller Sullivan.
Right.
So over the last 5 years, Keller Sullivan's debt and Horace Mann's debt is now completely off the books. Theoretically, well, it is a really good thing. I wish people felt that. I wish more people knew that. I certainly wish more people knew that last June. Because I think these things are the things you talk about with citizens when you have a coalition, you're asking for a tax increase. You say, do you realize that debt has fallen off the books and you've actually saving money, like, to the point earlier, I think to Brian Young's comment, which is spot on, right? Which is if people have that knowledge, maybe they feel a little bit differently that the taxes aren't going up as much. But I mean, you're also talking about $260,000 worth of debt. So it's not a lot of money, right? But it's something. And the assessors, when they come up later, you can ask them if you want, but they have the formula and how they calculate that maybe 1 penny per household that might come off taxes, right? But it's something. And it does show that we are, I think, managing things well.
Thank you, I yield.
Yeah, just to answer your question, Max, it's that was worth 3 cents of the $11.62. It was 3 cents.
Yeah.
That's what that meant, just to clarify that. Jamie, as it relates to the bottom section of the assessments and other votes, which is really, when I look at it, revenue is always a positive.
Right.
Expenses are the negative.
Right.
From a presentation purposes, is there any reason why these are not considered expenses in the grand scheme of things? I know Because they really are expenses where the revenue is the higher number, 158, and this other $8 million is really an expense. Is there any reason, just from a presentation purpose, why these are shown as a reduction of revenue versus an increase of expenses? Just presentation purposes.
One, because it's all, I think generally one, because it's all within our cherry sheets. And number two, it is a revenue decline, right? So on the next 4 sheets are all the expenses, which are really the payouts. You could consider an expense.
Right. And the reason why I asked that.
But it's like, but it's really linked to the formula of chapter 70, right? Or I should say most of those, almost all of those on there, except for abatements and exemptions, which is within the assessor's category for, obviously for property tax abatements. But even the abatements are all state laws. Folks who are blind or who are deaf or have a disability or a veteran, those are all authorized under state law. So everything you see there in assessments and other votes is all state law. So to have that with the state revenue picture on the same one is really what you do on a cherry sheet, control sheet, revenue sheet. Because you have all the revenues and then you have the state formulas that deduct whatever money's there. You could consider it expenses, but if I put it on the other sheets, on the expense on the voting document, I don't think it would flow as well. And it's not really an expense in the sense that hiring a board of health director is an expense. Salt and sand for snow and ice removal is an expense, right? We're wordsmithing things. I think we both see where we're getting, but I'm just trying to articulate.
It's more ultimately, because I think it's just hard to, when I look at this, it's hard to understand how much did the revenue grow year over year.
Right.
So we have a 2.5% prop, but in reality, if I get rid of that noise at the bottom, the revenue has grown between 2026 and about 3.1% with your 5%. In
local receipts,
local receipts, and that bucket, you're 2.5%, obviously with the majority of the levy, you're 1.1 in growth, which is actually in addition. So factor that all in reality, it's hard to see that in reality, the revenue increased 3.1%. So in theory, if you have a budget, you only can then have your expenses increase by 3.1% to, in theory, be equal. So it's just hard to see that number of 3.1 when you have all this other noise going on. That's all.
Yep. And to your revenue about local receipts and levy, right? That's why all these categories exist. This is fairly commonplace, but the real issue with state aid, I think, Councilor Blank, you need to look at is those assessments and other votes are attached to the state aid issue on state revenue. The levy is the levy, local receipts are within our control here locally. So when you aggregate up the numbers, like you're saying, which are all accurate, I would say you separate out state aid from those considerations. Why? Because we're assuming a 1% growth, but a 4% decline.
Yeah.
Assessments.
Correct.
But the 4% is on a smaller number. The 1% is on a $30 million number, right? I mean, I don't need to explain this to you. But that relationship of state aid is a problem. And as the perfect storm report that the MMA put out showed, our local aid being appropriated from the legislature to us across the state has lagged for a decade. So we are almost 350 million behind where we were 10 years ago for unrestricted general government aid. Now, the legislature and governor last year did the $150 per pupil, and that was your bullet, that was the talking point, and that was the press release. Okay, and for some districts, that may have meant a good thing. That may have been a boon in money. For us, it did not mean in any big boon. And so I would keep state aid out of this because I think from what you're going to deal with either this year or next year or the year after or the year after that at some point, probably every year, is you're going to have Representative Roy and Senator Roush in here at some point and start talking a little bit more cold turkey about what's going on with state aid. Because really those are the numbers that have laid out flat. And if you just look at the 1%, the 4%, I mean, obviously you can see where that trend is going to go over time. It's going to result in less state aid for the town of Franklin.
One last question can we get what, for the charter school assessment, can we get what the pupil head count is associated?
Did you say? I had just one other question. If we financed, say, like Tri-County at a higher rate, if there's an opportunity, is there ever an opportunity to, to refinance if the rates go down?
No. I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe
Steve,
I don't believe so.
And I'll work my way up.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just another question on charter school assessment. I had heard over the years, my kids went there, kind of familiar with all of the financing issues around it. But I was under the impression that there was some other remediation that the state made to help offset some of that cost. No?
There is, but it doesn't offset it for us. The state has another line item in the state budget that just goes directly to charter schools. So there's two essentially ways charters are funded. One is through a direct line item in the state budget where they have I don't even know the formula, but they have an appropriation schedule for the 60 charter schools in whatever it is, 50 or 60 charter schools in Massachusetts. So I'm making this up, don't hold me to this, but it's probably like a $500 million line item or something like that. Like, I don't know what it is, but it's probably 300, 400, 500 million or something. And then this part right here, the tuition payment to the charter is the second one and how they fund themselves. Now, whether they take gifts, other stuff like that and fundraise, maybe they do a little bit extra of that, but those are the two primary funding sources for charter schools.
Okay, but I thought there was some other way to try to make towns like Franklin more whole, if you will.
Charter school remediation?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all baked into the final state aid numbers. It's not a separate line item. It's all baked into the charter sheets.
So that's in the 30 million?
Yep.
Okay, so there's money in there because of the charter school cost.
I think it's charter school reimbursements. It's the second line item right under there. So 644. That was the line item the governor did veto. In July, she did veto some of those reimbursement monies, and the legislature the House and Senate just overrode her veto a couple months ago. So that if the legislature did not override their veto, that 638, 571 would have been lower. So we would have had to make more cuts. So that's certainly a good thing that Rep. Roy and Senator Roush did in the last couple months on this stuff here.
Okay, thank you.
All set?
Yes, sir.
So I have one request and two comments. First one, this is, I think, I asked for this because I think it's really helpful for us to see just what the projections are. And I think Councilor LeBlanc was speaking to it as well. It's also good to see historicals. I don't want to get crazy. I know, I know we don't want to crazy, but at least a year. Ideally, I'd love to see at least 3 years, but 1 year, just seeing historically how it differed. Recognizing there's going to be fluctuation, that there's no way that these projections are correct because they are simply projections, but it is helpful to have context as we think about forecasts going forward, just seeing what were the results in the past. That's the first comment. Secondly, the charter school assessment, I think the biggest takeaway there, and I appreciate the way you kind of walked us through both the impact to our budget from the charter school and the reimbursements. The stronger that Franklin Public Schools are, the fewer students we're going to have leaving for the charter school.
No question.
And so that's something we should be keeping in mind as we go forward, that's actually beneficial for us. The third comment, I just wanted to quickly, and it's a broad and intricate topic, just to speak to the Chapter 70 overview and risk, just calling out that is and I won't dive into the formula, but that is a formula that was designed. I actually don't know when it was designed, but it's at the state level that every single community has to review, and it determines how much aid we are going to get for Chapter 70. Right now, Franklin gets, if I recall correctly, the second most Chapter 70 aid of any town in the state of Massachusetts, except, so behind Boston. I know,
Hold harmless.
I know, Jamie,
Yes.
you've spoken about it a few times. So, you know, there have been talks about changing the formula for chapter
Yes.
70. That is a major risk to Franklin that we should think about. Now, I don't anticipate they're going to change the formula and take all of that money away. But it is worth noting that if we were sticking strictly to the formula, Franklin would currently, I think it'd be getting something like 12 or 13 million less in chapter than it is now. So the bottom line there is we are currently getting 12 or 13 million more from chapter 70 today than we should. So it's important that that's something that's noted, and just people are recognizing as we go through all of these, because despite that bottom unused levy line being being negative, that 1.9 million in the red, that could be significantly worse.
Yep. Yeah, and to Ken's point, through Mr. Chairman, Chapter 70 was created in 1993 as part of ed reform. That was also the year of charter schools. That was the year of school choice. That was probably the biggest event in state history and public education ever. That formula stayed in place until 2006 when they created what was called an aggregate wealth model. The old time Franklinites know all about Chapter 70 because the original formula was only based off land value. And at the time in the 90s, Franklin land was real cheap, right? You remember, pretty cheap.
Especially when your family owns it.
Especially when your family owns it. And so when the town had a increasing enrollment that was just going up through the roof, where you had you put all those modulars on every school, you saw an influx in Chapter 78 that you couldn't even keep up with because of the way the model was set. Very quickly in 2006, this is when I worked in the legislature, there was a town called Sandwich. Well, you know, the town called Sandwich. They were very land rich, but their median income was more working class. And they made a huge pitch. The Senate president was from that district at that point, and they did what's called an aggregate wealth model. So now the model is based off your median income of your community and your land value. Okay, that was also the time at which Franklin hit its peak enrollment. And ever since 2008, the school's been about 100 to 110 students less every year on average over 15 to 20 years. So to Ken's point, hold harmless was put into the legislation in 2006 to protect, at the time, cities like Gardner and New Bedford that were having huge declining enrollment spikes, and put a protection in there because at the time it wasn't affecting most cities and towns. A lot of school districts today see declining enrollment. We hear about it all the time. In fact, we were at a forum earlier in Medway with finance officials, and you could see around the room, everybody's talking about the declining enrollment in their school districts. So I think in some ways it'll be interesting to see how the legislature deals with this in 2 years. You know, when they look at the formula after the election next year, I'm sure, after DESE puts out a report. It's a huge vulnerability for the town. It's good that other districts have declining enrollments from the perspective that's more people that are going to need that safety net. But when the Student Opportunity Act got passed in 2019, that was an infusion of money into underperforming districts. So while the state put billions of dollars into public education in 2019, we didn't see any of that huge benefit. Rep. Roy, Senator Spilka, Senator Roush prioritized the charter school reimbursement line items, special education circuit breakers, some of the other things in there to try to make things whole for towns. But the last thing I'll say to Ken's point is, when the aggregate wealth model came in and the declining enrollment went down in 2008, that's really when, and I think many have spoken to this before, that was when the only override was passed in Franklin, I think in 2007. And there was still a short-term conversation. I think there was another one in 2008, maybe 2010, right? 2010. So the town was trying to figure out originally how to deal with this. The state's going to look at hold harmless at some point and probably say, you haven't been doing your job at the local level, raising your tax levy over those 15 years and relying on state aid when your land values and median income of your town have gone way up. So that's the pickle Franklin will be in about a year and a half. And that's going to be awfully hard to defend when you have failed overrides, because you've tried. But then some people are going to say, well, you tried but failed. People didn't want to raise their property taxes, so maybe they wanted to make cuts, right? So that's a debate 18, maybe 2 years from now. But that's your dichotomy, as much as I can synthesize it down into about 5 minutes. But you're spot on. It is a huge area of concern in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just wanted to call that out because though we will absolutely need to have that debate in 18 months, it will not be worthwhile. It won't be a worthwhile debate if we're not educated, if we don't actually know what's happening. And, we can see this one coming.
Yeah.
We should have seen it before, but we can see it now. Just let's just try to understand what's behind it.
And you are 100% correct too. If the town funded its school system to the level that people desire, there would be fewer people going to other schools. And you're going to have more competition in a little while when the Tri-County school opens in a couple of years too. When you have a big, brand new glistening school, I'm sure there'll be a few more applicants, and there's good jobs out there, obviously.
It's where it's going.
For where it's going. So, it's certainly it's absolutely true, what you said, Ken, but where we're at.
Okay, I just have a couple questions. So when we were talking about the charter school and an earlier town council not objecting to the enrollment, the increase in the no cap on the increase in students of the charter school, you said that we should dig into that in the future. Is there anything that we can do to I don't know, limit that now or say, hey, we want to put a cap on Franklin students going to that to minimize that? Or is this just a conversation you think we should be having in the future?
It's a great question. I mean, first of all, there's nothing you can do about the charter now, right? I mean, I think maybe at some point, if overall enrollment across all districts comes down at some point, the state may have to look at that. I mean, the state is seeing a pretty heavy declining enrollment of student population because people are moving out of the state, all those affordability issues. My apologies. I didn't mean to dig into it to do a whole nother discussion. It was actually a school committee decision not to do that. That was not a council decision at the time. The school committee should have, in my opinion, stepped up and said, we need to advocate to limit the amount of kids coming from Franklin to the charter school, because there were 7 or 8 other towns getting in on the charter, and that's how the charter presented itself to the state. There's really not much you can do about it now. The charter is the charter. I just didn't want to go down a rabbit hole of discussing who, what, when, where, and how, but I know the superintendent at the time and others, this was a big issue 10 years ago. I mean, right when you got on the council, Councilor Dorco, it was a pretty big issue. It was the issue you would talk about in a lot of these meetings, was about what to do about the charter school. So, there's resources on the DESE website. I don't think we need to peel it, back too deeply, but I just wanted to make sure that in the trajectory of how we got into this problem, that was a substantial decision. That was a missed opportunity. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask, so you kept talking about the state aid money that's coming in, and I know that we've got Chapter 70 school aid and the unrestricted aid. And obviously, as you said, we've got almost $6.5 million going out to the charter school. Is the rest, and that's, take.
Yep.
Or, okay, so 100% of the rest of it is going, okay. So then everything else is that we're talking about when we talk about state aid is the unrestricted aid that we have. That's okay.
And that generally basically goes to the schools too.
Okay.
I mean, I don't carve it up. I do not sit around and carve up who gets what. That's not the way our budget's presented. But if you look at the total aggregate of generally what they're getting, if you look at that whole line item there and you don't take away the abatements, you're looking at about $35.5 million in aid. They get an appropriation of about $80 million, right, out of the town budget. It's not exact math, but I mean, they're getting an overwhelming percentage, if not almost all of that locally.
All right. And then lastly, and this is not necessarily a question about how we divvy up our funds, but I am curious, as we're looking at the debt exclusions, do we anticipate any, I mean, I know there's talk of a possible police station, but are there other things that are coming up that we've identified as like, hey, this is something that is going to absolutely have to be a debt exclusion in the near future?
That's a great question. So I anticipate in January, you'll get a comprehensive facilities presentation on projects that we've just completed and done, stuff that's like on the burner, and then stuff that's starting to fall behind and become a real cascade of financial problems in the future. So that stuff that's on the burner that we, a couple of years ago, we talked about the Remington Jefferson remodel is definitely something that really needs to happen. It's about a 35 year life right now. You need to get another 30 out of that. It's fire alarms, roof, it's boilers, mechanicals, inside. There's a lot of stuff in that school.
Rehab.
Yeah, and that's going to be a $10 to $15 million project. I mean, if interest rates come down in April, could change the dichotomy of that a little bit. But when you were looking at last few years at 4 or 5%, that's not a good number. And there's no capacity in the budget to do it. So you'd probably want to consider a debt exclusion on that. 2 years ago, I think I pitched, maybe a year and a half ago, when the first override came up, said your police station, Remington Jeff, the Horace Mann roof, the roof on top of Horace Mann, Oak Street School, sorry, like I'm still working at that. I still call things Great Woods Amphitheater, not whatever they call it today, so I'm stuck in the past. But RJ and Horace Mann, those two schools, the roof, probably a couple million. You could do a debt exclusion for a capital improvement, some sort of capital plan. The recycling center will be up pretty soon. We have a financial obligation to essentially line what was the old town dump back in the 50s and 60s, where everybody just threw their trash into a big hole. And now we're obligated to line that to protect that ecosystem. And then there was also, we had an earmark for a little while, but it went aside in the pandemic to build a new recycling center. We've talked about that for a while. I'm just looking at that as like your facilities. There's certainly the senior center needs the sprinkler system repaired. There's other things at $500,000, $250,000, $1 million. But usually when you go out for borrowing, when you're paying interest, you're going to want at least 7 digits, probably 8 digits. You're going to want 10, 15, 20, 25 million. The original concept was, do you do it all in one bundle?
That's what we were thinking.
Right.
We
I
talked
think a
about
couple
that
years
a
ago,
lot.
when we originally had the first override, and I know people, weren't always happy about all this stuff, but we had a pretty good vision to say, hey, in 2 years, when the police station design is ready, the Remington Jefferson model was ready. We have not hired an OPM yet for that project because we don't have bandwidth and staff, and there's no foresight as to when we could afford a debt exclusion for the remodel of the school. But the original concept, I think, is Councilor Cormier and Councilor DeLoco remember, was and it would be happening like around now or within a year, is that you would try to go out to the public and say, I'm making this up, $50, $60 million debt exclusion. Wait for the Fed to drop interest rates down, try to get them really low. Right now, the last time we borrowed, I think we got a 3% interest rate. Was it 3.1, 3.5? So last time we went out to borrow was a 3.5 interest rate. That's pretty good. That's why our AAA bond rating is critical.
That's very important.
Because you have a AA or a AA plus, you're going to pay a higher interest rate even when others are paying lower. And interest is real money. That's taxes. Right. So that all gets baked into your debt exclusion. So I would say those are the 3 or 4 big ones that I can think of off the top of my head that would be rolled into some sort of debt exclusion. And we would do the school ones as one. I wouldn't go out and do a separate vote for Horace Mann. You would want to do it as one package. Right. So that's probably the stuff that's right immediately in front of us.
So it sounds like those would be, the school and maybe the recycling center, senior center. I don't know if that would be combined into one. It sounds like, and then separately the police station. I know it sounds like you were saying that before you were thinking about having one debt exclusion vote, but I know you said it makes more sense to do a 7 or 8 figure, and it sounds like those would both be 7 or 8.
They all would be. The Horace Mann roof will be 7 digits. RemJef and the police station will be 15 million for RemJef, 10, whatever. And then about 30, 40, 45 million, depending on when you went out for a debt exclusion. That's a decision the council would have to make, right? Do you have multiple debt exclusion questions on one ballot? I think the conventional logic was from last year in the override, if everybody's in the pot and everybody has a stake in the game, that will bring unification, right? Like everybody shares in something. I think you would say, geez, I would love to believe that the school community, the people for public safety, other stakeholders would join together and say, we all need this. This benefits our community as a whole. But that's a decision all of you are going to have to make. If you have separate ballot questions, do people pit one against the other? I don't know. Those are all, conversations at some point if the council's ever ready to do that. That's something down the road. I think at this juncture, you guys are gonna have to make the decision, but when you see the capital plan, you will see we are falling way behind quick. And if you think what you hear in January is going to be bad this year, fast forward a whole nother year, if we don't start solving these problems, you're going to fall behind even quicker. And it's basic maintenance. It's $30,000 for a freezer that's going to break in the senior center. It's $20,000 for lights at the field. It's just odds and ends that have to get done. That's what this whole building was boilers, mechanicals, broken windows. I had a leak. I have a video. I have a leak in my office where water was just pouring in. There were carpets that were ripped out here. We had somebody fall. That's a liability. I know that some people weren't happy about the renovations to the municipal building, and I know that there was a fair amount of criticism about that. But actually, if you didn't do that, this building would become a financial noose around your neck too, because you'd be having worse things than just Franklin TV breaking. The boilers were at 20, all that stuff needed to be replaced. So you're going to see on the capital plan this year, a whole suite of other stuff that is going to be very tough to finance. And the sprinkler system at the senior center is about a $750,000 item. So, it's going to get tough quick. So, Councilor Griffith, that's I would say the police station, RemJef, Horace Mann, recycling center, probably the new facilities, remodeled facilities, or stuff that would probably be the stuff that'd be generally up next.
Okay, thank you.
You okay now?
I'm good, thank you.
Go ahead, Ted.
Geez, thanks. Jamie, just for the purposes, since we have a lot of engagement tonight, in the debt exclusions up top, those numbers that you're showing are only the budgeted payment on the long-term loan, right? Just so people understand, that's not the balance due on those projects.
That's correct.
Can you tell everybody, maybe if you don't know, it's okay right now, but how much do we still owe total on those projects?
Oh, on all of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Carrie will get those.
If I could get that back for you, I can.
That's fine. I think people would probably benefit from knowing.
Well, Tri-County, just so people know, this is the first year we're paying the bill. So you're stuck with 30 years. Yeah, 30 years is definitely Tri-County, right? The high school, I think you have 30 years left on that too, because I think it was a 40-year note.
On both number 1 and number 2?
Correct.
50.
Just on number 1, excuse me. The second debt exclusion on the high school is 2050. Did I hear a voice out of it?
Yeah.
Did I hear a voice?
2043.
2043.
So there's.
You're paying those for the rest of your life.
It's 100 million.
Yeah, 100 million.
So they're not, I just want to convey, I think the point you're trying to make is they're not falling off anytime soon.
No, and I do think, to Mr. Young's earlier point, it's important that people understand these numbers and understand these projects. And I kind of looping into Councilor Griffith's point about projects, this also comes into play about the discussions with selling town assets as well.
Right.
Because, when we do finally get around to doing something with Davis there, if we make the decision to liquidate the old rec building, because they're now at Parmenter, right? Those monies can only be used on very specific things. They can't just be patched in to help the budget problem. So we could use that money for
Absolutely.
capital projects though, Jamie, right?
100%, you nailed it. Like, if we sold Davis there, I'm just making up, say you get 5 million. You cannot use any of those monies in the operating budget
Nothing.
at all. That has to be then used, it has to be going to a special revenue account. It's a whole set of state laws, but we might be able to pay some of the other capital projects that Councilor Griffith was just mentioning with some of those revenues, right? The town sold the land when you go on Pond Street where those Brookfield condos are, right up past the Starbucks, that they were called the old Franklin sewer beds.
The sewer beds.
You all sold that right when I got here, and I think it was
20
1.5 million, 2015 or 16, something like
2015,
that.
I think it was.
And then that 1.5 million was then used to pay off 40% of the Maple Hill open space purchase.
Right.
With cash. So you're exactly right. You could use the money from sale of those buildings towards maybe some of the other land related costs or other building related costs.
And it's important for people to know too, there is a little bit of savings because we're currently have some operating costs
Right.
with those buildings.
That's right.
Right, with insurance and heating them and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
My second question, Jamie, really comes to in one of your previous memos, I think it was August, you talked about the 5-year forecast and you mentioned that the capital program may have to be either eliminated or reduced significantly because of one-time revenues, that we may actually need to make the decision to start patching operational holes. I heard tonight, you're going to come to us in January with at least some projects on the capital program, but can you just elaborate a little bit on kind of, for everyone's benefit, the future of that program?
Sure. So in the memo, you're right, it was the memo from August, and I just want people to be clear, like, I wasn't putting editorial comments in there about options because we're going to do them. If you read it carefully, and I understand people read it and they have a reaction to it, I just wanted to float out 5, 6, 7, 8 ideas to kind of start getting the conversation started in August, September, October, November. I'm not so sure that happened as much as I thought it would, but to your point, there was a comment in that memo about just postponing the capital program while y'all go through this exercise. I think we talked about the GIC and the healthcare at the last meeting. I mean, our staff have started talking about open enrollment is in April. We may have to wait for the budget stuff until May, June, because maybe we have to wait until the actual open enrollment is done, so we know actual numbers we're working with. But I think up until maybe the spring, you guys are gonna have some tough decisions. I mean, you're gonna see on the capital plan, 750,000 requested for the senior center sprinkler project. I think you two especially, but many know of that problem. So how long do we kick that out for? You're going to see a bunch of other items on there on the new style project, with state and things of that sort. You're going to see 3 cruisers. You're going to see the $300,000 or $400,000 in gear for the fire department, which is part of their basic safety gear. I know the schools will have a lot of requests, as they should, for a lot of other stuff. I think you guys are going to have to at least see what the requests are. There's nothing that prohibits you from saying, Jamie, we want to spend free cash now on, the fire protection gear. Like, we've just got to do it. Maybe the tasers for police, you just got to do it. There may be a sped van that's totally rotted out and doesn't pass inspection. Maybe you decide you got to do that, right? Maybe that's 3, 4, 5, 700,000. Maybe it's $1 million. I don't know. But whatever money you spend is going to go against one of your key revenue sources to patch the budget gap as well. Or pay for healthcare if subscriber rates go way up and we need a buffer zone on that. I'm just using those as a few examples. So, there are going to be a lot of choices that are going to have to be made, much more than in the past. I think, because as you know, Councilor Cormier-Ledger, and I'm sure others know too, but just for the folks at home, I mean, we're funding our police cruisers through capital. That's traditional in a lot of communities our size. They pay for them in their operating budget. If we want to be Natick and Needham, they have 50 to 100 million more in their operating budget than we do. I mean, their tax levies, I think Needham's 230 million. I just sat next to the Natick Town Administrator today at the forum, Jamie Erickson, great friend of mine for a long time. His tax levy is over 200 million. It's almost double what ours is. It's like not even apples and oranges anymore. You're talking about two totally different sports. We just can't be Natick. So I think when you're getting to comparing to those, they pay for their fire gear in their budget. We don't. We pay for it through one-time money.
Been
So,
talking about that for a while.
and I know you've.
We've been kicking that
Yeah,
around
we've been
for a
kicking
while.
that
We-
around.
Yeah, and actually one year,
We tried it.
we
We took it back.
yeah, we did. We tried putting it in to show the public
What it was.
what it was, right?
Yeah. We had to
and-
take it
And we had
back
to take it
out.
out, right?
Yeah, I think to my last point, Jamie, as we go into the capital program, as we go into joint budget finance discussions, like we're gonna have to have some very open and honest conversations with our colleagues on the school committee about their revolving funds. Because we're very limited with the municipal side, with the amount of money that's put into what we call free cash, right? And we've always been extremely generous about saying, okay, the fire department's contributing to that, the police department's contributing to that, your department, everybody on the municipal side is funding that. But the school department's not funding that. The school department's putting their money in a different bucket, but the school department's coming over to that side looking for money for projects and curriculum, which I understand is needed. It's not a criticism. I'm simply saying we may be at the point where we have to say some of those traditional requests from the school side to the municipal side for free cash may not be possible anymore. And we may have to insist that they look at their revolving funds to pay for some of those things.
Yeah.
And I know that's going to be a very difficult conversation.
Yeah.
But I think we're there.
Well, I'll give you, to that point, Councilor Cormier Ledger, actually one example of that is we pay custodial stuff out of our budget, right, the facilities department. But there's revenues that come in on facilities for them that they could put in that indirect line item that we were showing earlier. If they added 50,000, I'm making this up, $50,000 in indirect spending from revolving accounts based on facility fees, that would help offset our budget by $50,000. And I'm very pleased, and I congratulated the school committee, Lucas and Bob Dutch. If you remember, when he was here for a couple of years helping them, he got the fee schedule back in order, where the facility rentals now have an escalator in it every year, because for 10 plus years, that number was never going up. So we're paying 2.5% for a custodian. And each year they may get a raise of 1, 2, or 2.5%. But the fee that was being collected wasn't actually filling that cost.
Yeah, Bob put that up.
Right, and Bob did a great job, and Lucas and Jana and all the team did a great job getting those fees in order. I know the athletic fees are very unpopular, as they should be, but some of these other fees that I cared about, like making sure that the person we're paying to clean the gym has the money coming in through an account, is something that has to get looked at. So I appreciate that comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you all set?
Yep.
Everybody hit it pretty hard this time. Jamie, I just got one question on the Norfolk County retirement.
Yeah.
Did we get hit pretty hard this year with them?
We did. I'll go down to that section, actually. So, yes. The good news is, well, there's good news and bad news.
Yes.
The good news is we, for the second year, have successfully lobbied the county pension board to not try to fully fund this whole thing quicker than they were trying. That really would have been 10, 11, 12, 13% pension increases on that line item right in 910 retirement and pension. I want to make sure I'm very clear about this. While a majority of that account right there, retirement and pension, certainly are town employees, non-teacher, non-MTRS school employees are in there too. And this gets reported to the state as part of our net school spending. So we did dodge we did dodge a little bit of a bullet with that. We still are getting an 8% increase, okay, which is manageable. But when individuals, and I know someone wrote to you guys earlier, when you look at 4.8% increase, I want to make sure it's very clear to people the driving force behind that number. So Celia is correct, and I think you brought this up, Councilor Griffith, recently. If you take healthcare out of the school budget and you go up to account 300, I think Jana brought it up, I think it's like 2.6 or 2.7% increase. That's absolutely accurate. And if you move healthcare to this benefits line item here, it's really kind of 6, 1/2 dozen the other, right? Like you're just taking money from the school account, revolving and putting it in the town, but the cost driver is really the same because the schools are assuming the same 14% increase that we are. But all of these other accounts in here are where you start to generate cost increases that are above the department. So if you go up the list up top of all the departments, I assume a 2.5% increase. Why? Because all the collective bargaining agreements are at a 2.5% COLA. So it's not really difficult to do. Most of those numbers are pretty easy to do. The Board of Health is not your budget buster. The Planning Board is not killing your budget. The Conservation Commission with its whopping 1 employee is not hurting your town. That is not driving, the town administrator's office is obviously also not driving up your costs. So in all sincerity, our town departments are not the ones driving up the costs, including, and to many people's points, including the schools. Although I'd have a counter argument to that with the $9.5 million requested increase in FY24, $9.5 million 1-year increase is a lot. That was not because of healthcare. But moving forward now, they are correct. If we took healthcare out, the school account 300 line item would be much more commensurate with all the other town departments, police, fire, DPW, facilities, et cetera. This area right here, benefits, is your biggest cost driver.
Right.
DPW and facilities have been cut. Those are cost drivers too because of goods and services with inflation and other things. But this is really the key. Retirement and pension, if you go up 8%, well, that's going to drive up your overall average. Health insurance at 14%, that's going to drive up your average. Retired teacher health insurance, non-GI school retirees, those are numbers that are going to go up. We don't have any control over these. You look at workers' compensation. The town pays for town and schools out of that account. Unemployment insurance, the town budget pays for all of those numbers out of this account. Medicare, the schools have their own Medicare number in their budget. If we decide we want to merge these, it's the same percentage, so it's going to be the same amount. And then OPEB is a little different. We'll get to OPEB in March.
Yeah.
But those cost drivers there are issues that are percentage-wise driving up a large portion of the municipal budget, particularly healthcare, pensions, and the other accounts in there with GIC in those points. Are some of the other accounts also we're driving other budget, like DPW expenses? Yes, but because they've been cut so much the last 2 years, they're really not. They're really not. We assumed in this budget model a 2.5% increase. You saw your max. So I'll just leave it there. But that's generally the reasons for the 4.8%.
I just didn't want these if Norfolk County wanted what they wanted for the retirement, that would probably bankrupt every town in Norfolk County.
That's why they didn't do it.
Yeah.
But we had to still all go to the meetings and talk about,
We owe it.
We owe it.
Yeah.
And the other problem with that is on the other side is, and to the Norfolk County folks' defense, they're trying to fully fund the system, which is a statutory obligation, right? So they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
There's no question that they're trying to do the right thing. I think the problem you're seeing with it is the timing of them trying to do the right thing is also the timing where we have sky high inflation for the last few years. You've got all these other cost increases coming into the marketplace, and it's just kind of all there.
As long as you settle that, that's a huge settlement.
Yeah, but it's still 8%.
Yeah, I know, but.
So on a line item of 2.5 across the board, then we have to figure out 5.5% difference somewhere else, right? So these are costs that affect both the town and the schools. Same thing with liability insurance. We assumed 2% down here, 2.5%. We do all the liability, property and casualty for all the school fleet, all the school buildings. It's all in the municipal budget. So these are all part of the cost that were part of my presentation that makes up that 18.5, 19, $20 million that's in the town budget that goes towards school costs. All of this gets reported to the state, which is required by law under our net school spending law. All of this is done by Jana and Evan in our finance offices and reported to the state, I think, in October.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had one follow-up question to a previous counselor's comments around the revolving accounts that the schools have. I was curious if the revolving accounts are more like the enterprise fund that we have rather than free cash, because I don't know if, because my understanding is they have a specific purpose and then the money comes in for that purpose and it's spent for that purpose. And that sounds more like an enterprise fund than like something that just goes and is used for capital.
There's I mean, they are, for illustrative purposes, they're very similar. You're correct. I know revolving funds, you know, a water district is under a whole separate statute. And the revolving funds, I will say, most revolving funds can't just be used for anything. So there are probably some limitations, probably many limitations at which the school district can expend revolving funds. And it is for the purpose in which it was spent.
So to be clear, it cannot be used like we use free cash for a capital project.
Cannot be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie.
Any
Any other
questions on
questions?
expenses or? I didn't go through the whole chart, but I mean, I think it was pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I think we just went down 2.5% assumptions. By the way, I'll end with this unless folks have a few more questions. So where do we go from here? So the next time you'll see any revised numbers up here is when the governor puts out her budget at the end of January.
Right.
Okay, so that'll be done at the MMA conference on the 22nd or 23rd. Then Evan will get a cherry sheet, you know, early February, late January. He'll start plugging the numbers in. And then we will also in January, I've already set up all departmental budgets, including the school budget with the staff to go through what their recommendations are. It'll be very consistent with what you see up here. The town council budget doesn't need to go up 2.5%.
Obviously.
I mean, unless y'all want to, everybody wants to go to the MMA conference. But you know, you could probably take that 2.5% off. That might save you a couple $100, right? So we're going to go through and refine these. The finance committee may not need a 2.5% increase. I'm not saying there's a lot of money in here to save, but by the time you get to like early March, traditionally the first council meeting in early March is when I present a preliminary budget. Okay. But I think between now and then, for all 9 of you, you've got to figure out when do you want to start working with the school committee? Do you want to have the school committee come in here? Do you want to go to their meeting? Do you want to have a neutral site? How do you want to have those meetings? Because before you know it, we're going to be sitting here in the second week of January. And the options are really limited. So y'all have to start thinking about when the new year clicks in January, how are y'all going to work with the school community and committee? Where do you want to start talking about these issues? And then what's the roadmap forward? So we can try to help the public understand what.
That's something we can discuss in the.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Next couple of meetings, we can figure out, maybe between the school, I'll contact the school people and we can figure out what's the best way we can meet, and get everything done. I think that's the best thing to do.
Okay,
Right?
great.
All right,
You guys all set? Yep.
okay. So we're gonna,
Sorry,
one question?
just one
Yeah.
comment. Because I know that most people didn't get that email today that you referenced a couple of times. I just wanted to point out that I think that the point of that email is in line with what you're saying, which is just once you separate some of these other factors like insurance and whatnot. And when you take into consideration the fact that the schools have done their whole rebalancing or whatever, the restructuring, they took some cost out, that everybody's in the same boat. It was just, I think he's trying to correct the perception that the schools or the town were we're overdoing it. We're growing more dramatically or spending more aggressively than, one than the other. My interpretation of that email, was just, we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I think that's so just wanted for those who didn't get that email to have at least that context.
I appreciate that. I didn't necessarily take it that way, and that's okay. I think there's a issue around optics. And I think people are focused on optics. And Councilor Frangillo could not have spoken to it any better. We can try to point fingers about growth, but it's out there. And I think this is something that maybe we have to talk about with Max's agenda item about the feeling of where this town going, not feeling it's heading in the right direction, trust, leadership, honesty, these other things. I think as long as we keep worrying about optics, we're wasting time, valuable time on finding solutions and leading to try to solve the problem. I firmly believe the most voters in this town want the 9 of you and the school committee and all of us to work together to solve this issue. So they don't have to think about it, worry about it, and try to, but I think we're in optics. And to me, the optic that is most important is the pie is nowhere near big enough to fund everything that's going on. And it's just not. To me, the optic that's really bad and that needs to be addressed is how are we going to solve this problem? Especially when you had 2 failed overrides where the voters spoke loudly twice. And to Councilor Griffith's point and Councilor Ledger, we have a whole backlog of capital projects too that are going to start to become more costly. So I appreciate that narrative. I'm gonna change the way I viewed that to the way that you did, and I'm gonna trust that you're correct on that. So I'm gonna take it that way. But it felt like a little bit more like.
I get
felt a little more
that way, but I do.
But I think I got to encourage everybody that when that kind of stuff is there, we need to try to reroute the narratives back somewhere else. Away from, well, help, like I said last year at the joint budget meetings, I said it at every one. Whether the school pays for it out of account 300 or whether it comes out of the town budget, it is still a healthcare crisis.
Yes.
The crisis is healthcare, and the crisis is the problems of how do we figure this out? How do we lobby how do we solve the issue of healthcare? Because it's croaking both budgets instead of trying to figure out which one it's going to go with, right? And so that, and I know you were there for those. I said that, and the superintendent, I believe, said the same thing multiple times too. So how do we get that narrative? How do we get the residents to feel that narrative? I think is going to be the question. So.
Thank you, Ken. All right, so we're gonna go back to a public hearing. So I'm declaring the hearing for the FY 26 tax classification hearing now open.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Chris Feely, Chairman of the Board of Assessors. This is Kevin Doyle, he's the Director of Assessing, and Cheryl Hanley, she's a member of the Board of Assessors. What we'd like to do is go through a couple of quick slides and then take questions.
Sure.
Okay. So this first slide is in reference to the new growth, which is a line item of the tax levy. And if anybody has a particular question on the slide, please stop me. Again, this is the actual levy.
Did you have something on this?
I'm sorry?
He did right off the bat. It's about this slide.
Okay, go ahead.
So I noticed, I actually looked at some of the previous history around the new growth. And I noticed that a good chunk of new growth is actually personal property, which most people don't realize. And I also worked with your office, and I want to know, first off, are you auditing, doing compliance audits to verify that businesses have declared their equipment, or is there a gap in sort of what we're doing to verify that businesses have declared all their personal property?
There's not an audit of that process.
Okay. So I just didn't know if in the future, if that's something we could look into. Like if we might be able to actually generate more revenue towards new growth if we didn't, if there's businesses that are not reporting the personal property that should be, and we were to audit some of them to, have an enforcement mechanism, could we actually increase new growth and pay for that program?
So I don't know the answer to that, whether it would create more revenue in comparison to the cost, but it's something we could definitely look
Okay,
at.
yeah, that's all I want. That's all I ask is if it's something we can look at. Because I just want to make sure we're not leaving anything on the table. I don't want people to think, oh, we found money. That's not what's happening. But I think that if we're making sure we can do everything we can to make sure that businesses are contributing their fair share and doing everything that's required of them, I think that's something that we should make sure we're doing. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Just to build on that, Chris, how did we get the number that was added for new growth? So what was the mechanism to add that? If you go back to that slide, I can't remember what that slide was, but.
I can't go, I'm not sure how to go back to that slide.
So I guess that's the big, if we can't audit it, how did we find out there's $70 million more of real property?
Say, Kevin. Go ahead.
This is a specialized area in assessing, and there's a the company that we've hired, we had them for many years. They do probably over 100 communities just in Massachusetts alone and other states as well, in New England. They're out, they do discovery on the road. They go through all the main streets, and they're reviewing periodically. They're reviewing the accounts that exist, and also they're collecting the data on site for new accounts. As well, we send out a formal list annually to all of the accounts that we know of or that we believe might be new and in place as of January 1st. And they report back to us. We get a very good return relative to personal property. That data is been processed, valued, and there are certain items that are eligible for growth. Basically, anything that's taxable that's added new since the previous January 1st is contributes to the new growth number. And there's also new growth in the larger accounts like public utilities.
Mm-hmm. So in theory, Kevin, it's more self reporting is how we're getting that information. We rely a majority of it is through self-reporting in theory.
Well, yeah, much of it.
Right. Okay, that's you answered my question. It's just thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilor LeBlanc.
Okay. So this next slide is in regards to how we establish the levy limit. And the first line item of that is the previous year's levy limit. What would get added to that is the 2.5%. And then the new growth number, which then gives us a subtotal of what the new levy limit is. Are there any questions on that?
Just, could you walk us through that? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay. Because I was playing around with these numbers a little bit. So for the 2026 levy limit, I get the 94 million from the prior year. There was a reduction in new growth of 21,000, right? Could you explain what that is?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, there was an account where there'd been a clerical error made in the percentage that was taxable for that particular account.
Okay, so not.
And we had to make an adjustment, and it was something that was included in the growth, and we have to make the adjustment of the original number. But in that next year, we actually picked up that and more for that particular account, because it's just a matter of, it hadn't been a complete project.
Okay.
No timing.
Yeah, timing.
So then you do that reduction and you add 2.5%, you get the 2,349,000. And then you add back additional new growth of 884. How did you get that 884 number? I couldn't reconcile where that number came from, the prior chart.
Okay, so on the previous, if you look at the previous slide, which is available in the packet,
Yep.
the new growth would you take the 76 million something.
Yeah.
Times the prior year tax rate. That's the mechanics of it. That's the value of the items or properties that are legally assessed as, can be counted as new growth. Those portions of those parcels and accounts that are new growth. That's the sum total of them. And then to get the new growth, 884 million. Thousand.
Okay, so you multiply
It's
each one.
times the prior year tax rate, that's the convention.
Prior year
So
tax
it's
rate for
11
single family.
$11.62.
11.
Well, it's the same rate for all.
Got it. Okay, so it's the 1162 you used against that to come up with.
Right.
Okay, I just couldn't figure out where that came from. Okay, thank you. And then while we're talking, just the levy ceiling at 222 million, just curious, why is that so high? How is that calculated?
So that
would be.
I'm sorry. So what that is it's a state mandate that we calculate that. It's based on a maximum rate of $25. So you, instead of the tax rate of 1142, that calculation is using a maximum of $25.
And why is that important?
That's a great question.
That's an
How many
aspect.
hours I spent trying to figure this out?
It's 129%, it's 124%. What does this mean? What did I miss?
It's a part of proposition, the original proposition 2.5. In other words, you cannot have a single tax rate, a uniform tax rate, any higher than $25 per thousand.
So that this shows the potential max levy. Got it. Okay.
Right.
So that's the.
I should have called you last week. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So this is a chart showing the median single-family value and the single rate and the change from the previous year, and then the single tax based on that median value. Does anyone have questions on that?
Mr. Chairman?
No, Ted can go first.
Directly to Chris. I think I know the answer, but I always like to ask questions for the benefit of the public watching, right? So somebody's personal property, their home, can be assessed at a higher number, but because of the 2.5 issue, then that means the tax rate has to come down, because together it can't be more than a 2.5% increase on the person year over year, right?
So if I understand your question, you're saying if the value of their home goes up more than the 2.5%, that the rate will then come down.
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I think that's an important factor for anybody out there that might be watching or in the audience that's sort of new to this tax conversation, because people say all the time, all right, well, the rate went down, why didn't my property tax go down? Well, it's because the value of your home and property went up.
Your property tax will never go down.
They will never.
I'm well aware, but yeah, thank you.
You all said,
Yes, thank you.
Councilor LeBlanc?
Yeah, and it's not on this schedule. In fact, actually, Councilor Duco last year at the last tax hearing, last year asked for this year, so it asked for it again. Can we please do this for the industrial and commercial as well? I know it's a smaller population, but I think it's imperative to know what the average value is on commercial and industrial.
So are you asking for the average or the median?
Both. You do both, so do both, to be honest with you. I think it's helpful.
Okay.
Because it's obviously, everyone knows my history when it comes to split tax rate. I'm not pushing that right now. Is this year, while yes, you see almost a 7.5% increase on residential rates or values. In the commercial side, there's a 6.5% reduction. So that's part of the reason why the single family bill is going up, is because we've had a deterioration of valuation in commercials. And I understand that they're less, I just think it just doesn't jump out to you in this presentation, and having that would. So to pick up on his theme last year, I'll ask for it again next year, or even just as an aside, publish it, and put it out there under the assessor's page so people can see it. Because to be honest with you, I've read the article today in the Herald about commercial property in Boston and how much is plummeting and how how it's raising residential rates. Again, I know that I know commercials are suffering, residents are suffering. Again, I'm not talking split tax rate, but something's gotta give when they're dropping 6.5 now. Even on the industrial side went up, but it only went up 2%, again, compared to 7.5. So now that's this year. Now you can cherry pick numbers. I'll look at last year. Actually, commercial industrial went up a little bit more than residential. So it bangs back and forth, but having that here in the presentation would just be helpful from a kind of balancing the scales. That's all.
Okay.
I did read the same article. I saw the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're hurting. So, thank you. That's all.
Go ahead.
Okay. This slide is in regards to a split tax rate, and it would show you what the shift would be. So in that column at the bottom, the chart at the bottom, if you see the residential rate and the CIP rate, they're 1142 each. And then it shows different increments of how you would change the residential rate and how they impact the commercial industrial property. At the very bottom, if we reduce the residential tax rate to $10.20, it would increase the commercial industrial property tax rate to $17.13. And a very important point is it does not change the amount of revenue we get. It does not increase the revenue. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Still trying to find the page.
It was earlier.
It was
number 9.
Page 9.
So I don't know if I'm early with this question, but why wouldn't we split the tax rate?
So that question is for the council.
No, I know, but I mean, do you have a statement on that?
So as a board, no, we do not, but my personal opinion is the amount of residential property is 82% and the commercial industrial is 18, round numbers. It's a huge impact on the commercial industrial. And I think one of the things people need to remember is commercial industrial isn't only the UPS or the industrial parks, it's the mom and pop restaurants, DeVita's Market, the barber shop, the Rome restaurant.
But, you know, earlier we were talking about Needham's tax rate. Residential is 10.6, on commercial industrial 20.91. They have 80% of their tax revenue comes from residential. So
they're also located in a much different location than us, where the businesses that are there probably would not choose to leave because of that. Where we are in Franklin, that may be a choice for them with our proximity to Rhode Island and other places. That's just my opinion.
No, that's fine. But we're also one of the lowest tax rates, commercial industrial tax rates in our neighborhood. Okay, so we could, I've looked at all the towns, the surrounding towns, and we're one of the lowest rates for commercial industrial. So, you know, as I look at this and I see that, you know, the average, the median value home is going to see, you know, 6% increase, one of the largest increases we've seen, $434. I also wonder what it would have been had we done an override. You know, that concerns me because, as we said, commercial is going down, residential is going up, you know, as far as this goes, and the burden is kind of shifting more to the residential. From my perspective, as a town council member, I'd like to see that adjusted, and this split tax rate gives us the ability to make that adjustment.
So but if that's a path that you choose to go down, I would not suggest doing that this evening. I would suggest that you put some forethought, get to the community, and be sitting here next year making that decision.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is that okay? Yeah, I kind of was going to go in the same direction of where Gene was, and I guess my question is process. We learned from last meeting that we had to sign off on some legislation that night. Do we have to sign off on this tonight to set the rate for next year?
Yes. There's a deadline in state law, yeah.
I understand.
Right.
We're here 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah, right, I get it.
So, I feel like I would need a lot more time to do that. I would favor a split tax rate. I think this goes to Councilor LeBlanc's point about having that same detailed sheet for commercial and industrial properties, because as I went through all these rates and I did the arithmetic based on 713 and 1370 and so forth, and I made that all out, I could see where the increase would go through for commercial and properties. But I have no way to know how to divide that across how many properties that is. Is it one big business? Is it 30? Is it 60? Is it 153? So I have no way of knowing that. I can see very clearly for single family homes what the increase is going to be and what it has been. And did that arithmetic too. And it's 6% for this year, but I think they're up 25% since 2020. You go back through all those increases, and I'm feeling for all of our fellow residents here that, you know, the tax rate is getting high. And it's great that the values are soaring, but that's a double-edged sword. You know, the bigger that value goes up, especially if you're retired or on a fixed income, or you're making less money than you did, that becomes a problem. So that's why I asked the question in sequence. If we have to decide on this tonight, we have one option, right? Right.
It's your decision.
I understand. I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just saying, okay, so it's a little.
The other piece to remember is if you do a split tax rate, that tax that you're increasing the commercial industrial property, that's an expense to that business, which then would change the value of that business in a negative way.
Which was going to be one of my earlier questions. I didn't know the sequence of how we would get to it in terms of how you assess the commercial properties, and maybe just spend 2 minutes on that. Like, how does that actually happen?
You want to take that?
Sure. Hi, my name is Cheryl Hanley. I'm also the assessor in the town of Westwood. And, you know, one thing as assessors is that we don't create the market, but we must reflect it.
Sure.
So obviously residential values, especially since the time of COVID have grown exponentially, and commercial values in the last couple of fiscal years have been going down, and we can base our residential values on sales because we have ample sales, but with commercial and industrial properties, we're looking at an income approach to value. That's the most accurate way. So as businesses have vacancies, or their income is down, or their rents or you know, what have you, that's affecting the value. So distribution warehouses used to be, during COVID, used to be very marketable, very expensive rents. They're less desirable because people are leaving their house again. So it's just not generating the same income as it did a few years ago. And we have to reflect those market changes.
So here in Franklin, most of the commercial assessment is through value or income?
Absolutely. I mean, Kevin can speak more to that, but yes, absolutely.
Yeah, can you describe the process for that? To getting that income valuation?
Well,
It's kind of complicated.
Well, I mean,
but
more than us and bolts,
yeah.
how do you go, are you getting this information from the business? Are they filling out a form? How does that work?
We make requests for income and expense disclosures to provide this information under confidentiality, and also though they're really, we expect them to be honest because we have other sources, you know, to check for basically the advertised sources. We can check for rental information, lease information. So this is for the property owner. There's an income, rent or lease, you know. There's potentially some vacancy collection that occurs. There are expenses to the building, to the operation of the real estate that offset the income, and you end up with a net operating income. And that's, the net number is then capitalized to reflect value in the market for that piece of real estate to an investor. That's a
And
simple,
how's the compliance rate for getting that information from the
very,
businesses?
very good. Very good. We stay right on top of that, and we work with the company that we've been with for 25 years, Patriot Properties, and they have drawn from regional information as well as the information that we gather right here in Franklin, because certainly some markets are, comparable. So we feel that we get a very well-balanced program.
And also, if they do not comply, they get fined and they lose their ability to appeal or request an abatement.
How much is the fine?
Right, on commercial or industrial property, it's $250 for not providing us these statements.
Proper statements.
Disclosures.
Mark, do you have?
Yes, so there's another side to this. It's not an exact science. If you're basing it on valuation, sales values is what a ready, willing, sell and buy will agree. That's more or less objective. However, when you're talking income approaches, there's plenty of room for disagreement, and there's a whole cottage industry out there of attorneys and appraisers who are prepared to take it to the appellate tax board and put in a completely different or very dramatically different lower valuation model than whatever the town has assessed. So if they feel that they're being victimized, if you will, that's a real risk as well. The appellate tax board has a real willingness to provide relief to taxpayers.
And who is the appellate tax board?
That's a state agency. That's the appeal it goes first to the assessors. If they don't provide the relief requested, the appeal is then to the appellate tax board. And from there, it goes to court, but that's a limited review. So for all intents and purposes, whatever happens at the appellate tax board, that's the end of the story. Plus, we have expense as well, because if somebody goes out and hires an appraiser to put in another value, that means we probably have to have an additional appraiser besides what we based our original appraisal on. So it's a significant expense. It isn't just, as far as assess for as much as the market can handle, because there's a pushback.
What if there's if it's recently sold? So you have a recent sale
That,
figure.
in non-residential, that's a factor, but it's not the deciding factor. And as a matter of fact, there's some fairly dramatic cases where there's multi-million-dollar swings between what was used, either what was sold or bought, and what the valuations were ultimately determined to be, based again on the income expense approach. The cap rate varies dramatically. What you can take into account for expenses. It's just a real art form.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just had a couple points of clarification. Earlier you said, I just want to be clear, you say for every dollar you shift to a business, it's $4 for that business. Is that correct, to pay taxes?
So you can look at the chart. So if it was, we reduced the residential by $1.22, it increases from $11.45 to $17.13. It's almost a $6 swing.
$6, wow, okay.
Yeah, for $1.22.
And
it's roughly five times, Max.
What was that?
It's roughly five times.
5 times,
Yeah.
okay. So in terms of, some people say, well, if you increase the value of individual properties, that'll increase the tax base, and that's not true, correct? No matter what you value individual properties, the tax levy is gonna remain the same, correct?
Correct.
So in terms of a split tax rate, if in terms of last year, if we raised both the industrial, commercial, and residential by the same percentage, what would the tax rate have to be for each one for it to be the same as last year plus 2.5%?
It would be this, I'm not sure I understand the
I'm not
question.
sorry, the rate, I'm sorry, the average value. So the single family value is, 600,000.
I understand your
Yeah.
question. I don't know the answer. That's what we're gonna get.
Okay.
That's the information.
Because
we're gonna get.
that's something that I think might be, that's as high as I'd be willing to split it, is keeping things the same as they are now in terms of the actual bill. I wouldn't
Okay.
be willing to go any further than that. So thank you.
Through the chair, I don't know if you have this on hand, but I'd be curious to know what the largest, I don't know, 5 or 10 companies in Franklin are. We don't need to know all 5, but what's number 1 and what's number 5 or number 10? I'm just kind of, because my impression is there's a pretty steep drop off after the first couple. And so as we talk about splitting rates, and just to be clear, I think it's something we need to talk about and we should absolutely consider. But as we talk about splitting rates, that may hit mom and pops incredibly hard because of that differential. Like, someone who owns a big warehouse, a large company, it may be an annoyance, but for but for a local, Creative Corner, who we recommended earlier, that could be a very big hit. So that's something we at least need to think about. Now, that said, if it's something we should also think about is how can we continue to attract business to Franklin? Because if we can start to shift that 80-20 split, 82-18 split or whatever, then a split rate becomes easier to digest, I would argue. So again, something to consider as we, I think at the end of the day, we've got to make a decision on taxes, tax rate for today. And we should move forward with that. But as we think about what the future looks like, we should be as a committee, figuring out what our plan, what's our approach, what's our strategy, so that if we want to consider split tax rates in the future, that they're actually viable.
I understand what you're asking for. I've made a note. We'll get that information.
Please and thank you.
My turn? Thank you,
Give me
Mr.
1 second, I'll be right over that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to comment a little bit on, I completely understand the want to give residents a little break, right? Because I fully also appreciate that there's a tremendous amount of unrealized gains, right? They're paying taxes on something that they're never going to see. And many people have said, I can't even afford to leave my house to go someplace else, but I'm paying and paying and paying and paying and paying, and maybe they're not even taking services any longer. I get all of that argument. The unfortunate reality, because it was brought up earlier about our commercial and industrial tax rate being low, our residential tax rate is low, right? We can look at this was discussed in ad nauseum during the override conversations, right? But anybody can look it up. You can just look at any neighboring town, any comparable city and town with a population like ours, and we are at the bottom of that number, right? So as much as I'd love to say, and people have even emailed us and said, oh, do away with residential taxes altogether. And I just sort of scratch my head and I say, well, where the hell's the money supposed to come from then? Like, do they think there's some magic pot that we can print it in the basement and make it come from? It just doesn't happen. But I do want to point out, because I've had these conversations with local businesses, that they're very afraid that the small, Mark Lenzi over at the liquor store already took a big whack when we approved the large box stores getting liquor licenses. So his small business is already taking a hit. We add more taxes to him. He's going to have to put it on the bottles that he's selling, because that's going to cripple his business. Our friends at the Rome, we whack them with something higher, plates of food go up, right? Our friends at Simon's Furniture, family-owned business for 50-something years, right? They are already dying to try to compete with Jordan's and Cardi's, right? So we're lucky that we have a lot of these mom and pop businesses that have stayed, that call Franklin home. They employ people, they bring money in, they bring viability to our downtown. I don't want to see those storefronts empty. We already have commercial and office and industrial and retail space all over town that nobody wants. You just have to go into any of these developments and walk through these office buildings, walk through these retail stores, and they're open. So these developers, these owners of these properties are already having a hard time finding clientele. To Ken's point, yes, maybe that can be a goal. Maybe that can be, something for Economic Development Committee to look at, is how do we attract new business to town to fill some of these spots and bring revenue in? I'm all for it, right? But the minute we get, like just to the point, like directly across the street, like look how many years we looked at that being an ugly vacant abandoned car dealer, right? And the bowling alley was abandoned. We looked at that for years. We got a developer to come along and say, yeah, I'll do some great things with it and make it beautiful and put all these businesses in and restaurants in. But then the residents are upset with that too, because they don't like to see, all the traffic or all of the additional people coming to town. So we're kind of in a loop, lose-lose here, right? But I just want to stress the point about the split tax rate issue. I agree that we have some big businesses that would probably be, yeah, whatever, right? But we also had a pretty big business last year that gave their notice that they were leaving their headquarters from Franklin, right? I don't remember the name. They came to us needing a tax break at one time. But, and they employed all these people and they were a manufacturing plant and their headquarters for US was here and they decided, yeah, we got a better offer somewhere else, we're leaving. So that's a reality in this whole game. So I think, yes, we have a few places that would be okay with the split tax rate conversation and they'd get by and they'd factor it into their numbers. But an awful lot of our neighbors that run these businesses that have kids in our schools that are employing people here in town would negatively be impacted by a change like this. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, through the chair. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of piggyback on everybody, because I understand what everyone's saying, but I'm gonna dive a little deeper into a split tax. And I had some computer issues, so I don't have the names of the towns, so I'm sorry. But there were certain towns that I came across that did a split tax rate, but it was split 3 different ways. So you had residential, you had commercial, and you had industrial. So those mom and pop shops weren't getting hit as hard because it was going more on the industrial side. So what would that take? And how would that be figured out?
I personally have never heard of that, the 3 rates.
Okay, then I will find those towns and I will send them to you.
Right, so the only thing I can think is that they may have listed them as 3, but the residential would be 1 rate, the commercial would be 1, and the industrial would be 1, but the commercial industrial would be the same rate.
They weren't though. They were literally, that's what I found fascinating. And I honestly found that information when I was arguing against the overrides. And then I lost everything on my computer, so now I have to go back and redig. But it was literally residential, we'll just say was like $10. Commercial might have been like $10.50, and industrial was like $11.
Wow.
And it was done in a tier form.
So what Kevin is mentioning is there's what they call a small business exemption, and that might have had something to do with that additional rate. But it's not a separate rate, it's an exemption for certain businesses. So it would be interesting to see what communities you saw that in.
I will have to find them, because if that's something that, if it is based on what I saw and it looks like that, it's something that we should also consider. And I think having something with this put on as an agenda, I know I'm jumping the gun, is something that we should start thinking about doing, because I think there's a lot of information that we don't have. And whether we're gonna choose to do a split tax or stay single, which I get, I don't wanna see any mom and pop shops go down. I mean, I grew up in town and I remember going to the mom and pop shops. I love them. So, but if there's a way to do it and we can ease the burden on residents, not cripple the mom and pop shops, I think we should try to do it, because if there's ever gonna be a time where you wanna talk about an override because you need more money, you gotta take some pressure off residents, because they're not gonna do it.
I get that. That was gonna be actually my question. I don't, find out how many towns that is.
I will, I have to go back and try to figure out how to get my archives.
Okay, but I can give you the answer. But, the issue I have, go ahead.
Mr. LeBlanc, Council LeBlanc has a comment about that.
Oh,
Yeah, so I actually just went to the state website, downloaded the tax rates, because there's a site you can do that at.
Yeah.
There currently is no towns that offer a difference between commercial and industrial, to your point. The difference, probably what you saw, Jane, was difference between personal property and commercial and industrial rate. That's where you saw the difference. So no town or city out of 350 have any difference with their 2025 tax rate between commercial and industrial. They're exactly the same. But there are, I can tell you exactly the count. For this year, there are about 20 towns where the commercial industrial rate is slightly higher than the personal property tax rate.
If I could, I used to work in Bellingham, and Bellingham had a slightly different personal property rate than the
Yep, 8
commercial
cents lower,
industrial rate.
correct.
And that had something to do with, there was a pilot program for a PowerPoint plant in Bellingham, and they had to back into the value. It was kind of a complicated process, so it's very unique to special assessment deals with pilot program. So it's not an option. So when we go in and we ask the town council to pick a residential rate, it's just picking a residential factor, and then we will have one rate for residential and commercial if we have a residential factor of 1. And then if the town council decided on a split factor, you'd have a different factor. But with Franklin's certain circumstances, you would just have the 2 separate for commercial, industrial, and personal property. So there have to be special circumstances to have a different tax rate for your personal properties. Very few communities have that.
So just want that clear.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask about, could you provide some more information about the small business exemption? I don't want to vote on it today. I just want to, or vote differently than today. I just was wondering what the pros and cons were of that.
So I'm not sure the pros and cons, that would be your opinion. But basically, for a business to qualify, the property has to be worth less than $1 million. And there has to be, I believe it's 15 or 10 or fewer employees.
And so if a big business, like a big landlord had someone who leased from them who was a small business, they would not count. Or would they count?
It would depend on how much, if the building is worth more than $1 million, no, that small business would not qualify. Yeah.
It's really the building owner.
Yeah.
The property.
Is it the
So
building?
the property owner would have to own the business in the building?
No,
They would
but
not.
the relief would go to the property owner.
Relief would go to the property owner.
Right.
And would it necessarily be passed to the tenant, or maybe not?
That's up to the landlord.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Carol.
And just to follow up on that, we would still be talking about the tax levy would still be at the 2.5, right? It would still. So
And none of the
taxes-
things we've talked about
Right.
would change how much levy limit
Right.
or tax we're bringing.
So then an exemption would just lower the amount that we would be bringing in, right? If there were,
No, we'd shift the burden to someone else.
okay, thank you.
So my, this is something we could talk about, I think. I don't think it's, we should do something like that right now, but no matter what happens, whoever's the commercial people that get the higher tax rate, we're gonna end up paying somehow, some way. I mean, like you say, at the Rome restaurant or at anywhere else, but I understand where it could be, I guess, used good, but Jamie, didn't we offer to get businesses in town? Sometimes we do offer a tax break too. We have done that in the past, haven't we?
Yeah, they're called tax increment financing.
Yeah,
They're called
we've done
TIFs.
that like for 5 years
The
or something.
Company that Councilor Cormier Ledger referenced earlier was Cold Chain Technologies. She plugged They developed the canisters that shipped the Moderna vaccine all over the world. So they're still in Forge Park, their main headquarters rather. Their manufacturing facilities and part of their headquarters. I actually never got a reply back from the company when I asked about some of those dynamics. I know there is some activity still here, but they moved to Texas and Tennessee.
They moved to Texas, right? Yeah.
So I think the interstate competition is an issue for Massachusetts as a whole. We've seen a lot of transition. I would say, like, think of, but also with Rhode Island and some of the other dynamics, I think the other communities, Plainville, Rentham, and other Route 1 and stuff like that. It's hard to know whether businesses would flee or not. But I think it's not really the current ones. It's whether or not you're inviting an environment for new ones to come.
Right.
So take, for example, EMC and Dell, right? That building has been vacant for 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, there's a little bit of activity in it. If someone came to buy that or use it, would they come here and invest in that property if they know they have to pay a higher tax rate? Especially in an environment where Massachusetts is already not in a very competitive place, which is why cold chain left. We could do tax increment financings. We've done those on maybe 5 or 6 or 7 in none since the pandemic, ironically, but before that, we were doing them pretty well.
Just to get
And
them.
they're very productive and they're very advantageous. The tax break is not that substantial. We actually just did one with Plain Z as well, a smaller one. They were already here, but they were doing an expansion and wanted a TIF. That actually was done since the pandemic, as I'm kind of going through the businesses in my head, but that's a state program, and you guys have always been supportive of those over the years. It's pretty much a boilerplate kind of thing. It's really one of those things that gives like a 5-year leeway for a business to get on its feet, get its return on investment through it, get some revenue streams, and then they start hiring local jobs, and then they provide that tax benefit on the back end in the future. So Carrie has the 5.
Hi, Carrie Bertoni, CFO. I just wanted to make sure that I got back to you because we pulled it up so fast. So Cedar Village, right? That's number 1. Dell EMC is number 2.
Cedar Village?
So that is, sorry. So that's over by Stop and Shop. That's
Franklin Village Mall.
Franklin Village Mall.
Cedar Village is the
Yes.
company.
Yep. Yep, sorry. And Forge Parkway, right? That whole industrial
Yeah.
park up there, 300 Financial Park, and then Big Box Property owner.
What's-
Those are the,
That's Big Y.
that's the,
No.
no, that's
That's
over
Big
by,
Box.
Yeah.
where, on Grove Street?
Yeah. UPS?
Yeah.
No, it's actually called Big Box. That's
Oh,
the
it is.
people that have the boxes that fall out of God knows where and they sell the stuff cheap.
Oh, on Grove Street, yes.
Oh, that one up on, oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where they get their stuff.
Was that the
They
fine?
charge 10 cents, but
I
they
feel like it drops pretty quickly after that, if I recall correctly.
Oh, that's it. I mean, I only have to report
10.
those. So, and this is actually based for FY25. So.
I'd be curious for the next 5 hours. 'Cause I think Big Box is still fairly big, but I thought it got smaller pretty quickly.
We'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Yep.
I thought UPS would be there. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have some comments.
Matt, what do you got?
So I did have, I'll try to finish up everything I have so you don't have to worry about me anymore. So I noticed that only 19 people who are seniors are benefiting from the low income tax exemption. And I looked on your website and I noticed the old flyer with the age 70 and not 65 was listed. So I'm wondering if you could update that on your website as well as maybe work with the Council on Aging to try to engage more seniors, because that's like 0.5% of the seniors in the town. So I'm hoping we can get more people in that credit. And then, is that something you'd be willing to do?
Yes.
Okay. I know right now your office is short-staffed, so I'm not gonna push the residential tax exemption. I know maybe when you're beefed up more, we could talk about looking into that again, whether we should have residential exemption. But right now, I'm probably just gonna vote present on that, just because I still feel like there's some future promise to that, but I'm not gonna vote against it today. I don't know if the senior means test exemption actually is supposed to be even on the agenda tonight. I noticed that in 2014, it's not on the agenda at all with the other ones. And then I had AI look at state law. It's too much for me to do on my own, and it couldn't even find that as one of the ones that's supposed to be listed, so I don't even know if we're supposed to do that. I could be wrong.
That's
not
within this grouping.
It's not within this grouping, and it's actually, the governor has legislation.
Really?
That she's trying to revamp or update that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I just want to personally, I know we've worked a lot on tax issues over the past few years. I just want to apologize to you both, and especially to Kevin, because you're such a nice guy, Kevin. I always put you through the ringer with all these tax questions. I just want to thank you for everything you do at the assessor's office. You do put a lot of hard work into this, and I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you.
You still have more questions, Jane, right?
I just have comments now.
We're gonna go to the public after.
Okay, all
We're
right,
gonna go to the public.
all right, so,
I think the guy who instigated this debate over split tax rates. One day I went into Google and I asked, are there any cities?
You have to identify yourself, your name and address. No, you have to put your name and your address.
Oh, sorry. Peter Baroic, 28 Tuscany Drive.
Okay.
I was Googling one day, trying to come up with an alternative to these repeated Proposition 2.5 overrides. Look into other sources of revenue. So I found on the internet that of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, 117 have appropriately set property tax rates for residential, industrial, and commercial properties. In Norfolk County, 5 cities and towns have set split property rates. So I am glad that my letter to the Observer brought up this discussion, because we've got to look at other alternatives. The other alternative that I found recently is that impact fees in Massachusetts can be charged when a big, well-financed developer comes in town. An assessment is done on what the water usage is going to be. And obviously, hand in hand goes what's the impact going to be on the sewage system in the town. Okay? So an impact fee can be levied. They have been done in Massachusetts. I'm not an expert in this, but I'm trying to get you folks to consider talking to an expert to see if we can take the tax break off the families where both parents are working to try and get enough for their kids and pay their taxes, and the big, well-financed developers come in and go wild. I live in a 55-plus community. We have our own wastewater treatment plant on site. We pay for its operation and its maintenance. We pay for the road work in our town, should we ever need it to be repaved. We pay for town water. What do we get? We get the town water that we pay for, but if there's a water main break or a hydrant gets hit, we're gonna have to pay for that. I pay $7,000 a year in taxes. What am I getting? Another alternative is those impact fees. And just to give you an idea, when you have a development come in, an average family of 4 people, they use between 320 and 400 gallons of water a day. You take that and go per month, it's 6,000 to 8,000 gallons a month. And you can probably have your water superintendent, or if you have a sewer department chairman, have him confirm these numbers. So in the course of a year, if you have a 500 unit development, they use between 36 million and 48 million gallons of water, and take that same water and shift it to the wastewater treatment plant. So I'm trying to open the door. Maybe split tax rates aren't the answer, but I'm glad you're looking into them and giving it some consideration. I understand the negative aspects. Some business might pull up and leave. But on the other hand, we got to do something to help the residential property owners here in town, because we are kind of getting at the end of the financial train. Thank you.
Mark, can you?
First of all, this exercise you're engaged in at the moment is revenue neutral. There's a fixed amount of money in the entire package. It was originally set when 2.5 was passed. It's been adjusted yearly as it's been indicated, and all you're doing is allocating the revenues that you're authorized to collect. Number two, as an alternative, it is ironically, it was a Franklin case that so held impact fees are illegal in Massachusetts. It was actually Greater Franklin Real Estate Developers versus the town of Franklin, which basically held that's an illegal tax. So, and again, in context, municipalities, notwithstanding the home rule amendment to the state constitution, are extremely limited in their ability to do anything on the financial side, including taxation. You need authority from the legislature, either as general legislation or in some cases, home rule petitions.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mark. Also, I would encourage anyone that has data that they've researched online to please check with the department that's affiliated with that. It's really critical that I think in this, we've discussed this and it'll be discussed. We've got numbers from AI, we've got Googleable this, we've got, and Councilor Cormier Ledger said this, I think a few months ago. He was really frustrated with something and he called the DPW and in 5 minutes they gave him the answer. I just don't like the idea of gallons per day by somebody out there assuming that there's some sort of albatross of no water or that businesses aren't paying. They pay the same rates, they pay the same fees as everybody else on water and sewer. So I would really question some of those data sets. The average residential water use in Franklin is about 50 gallons per household per day. Our town has won awards from DEP on water conservation on this stuff. We will be happy to do a water presentation, which is going to be in late January on all things infrastructure with the DPW. And then the final thing I wanted to mention is in terms of development that comes up, we're having a meeting in January at the Finance Committee. The assessors are going to come as a posted meeting, and we're going to talk about the economics of development. This has been a big issue in Franklin. I understand it. But just really quickly, where you get revenues mostly from development are two places. One, from tax base. If somebody came into a property, improve the property, the valuation of the property is higher. And the second revenue source is from building permits. So those are unanticipated revenues each year because we don't know when something's going to get built and whatever. That fee is paid through the building commissioner and that goes to free cash. Those are one-time monies from development that end up paying for your police cruisers, your special education vans, your curriculum, your facilities improvements, your fire protection gear, your fleet, your DPW fleet, your town fleet. All of those one-time purchases are used through purchasing money. There's very limited ability, to Mark's point, on impact fees because of that Franklin case. Ironically, we were the town that was in the middle of that lawsuit. It's very, very hard to create impact fees as described on developments in Massachusetts. I just wanted to correct and make sure people had, some of the information that was correct. Thank you.
You've got a comment?
I have a couple of comments.
Okay, why don't you do that and then I'll go to the public again.
Okay, all right.
You wanted to get your.
So yeah, I just wanted to share this information with my fellow council members. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the communities that are larger than Franklin, there are 52. Of those 52, 47 have a split tax rate. Of the communities that are around us, we all know Franklin's current tax rate is 11.62%. I'm just going to read you off their surrounding communities. Attleboro's commercial tax rate is 18.62, Bellingham 19.43, Foxborough 17.29, Hopkinton 14.16, Mansfield 20.5, Medway has a single 14.25, Milford 23.25, Millis 16.4, that's also a single, Norfolk 15.97, that's also a single, North Attleboro 15.72, 18.78 for Plainville, and Rentham 17.52.
Sorry, was that residential or?
This is the commercial rate. So clearly, the closest one to us is, of those that I read off, is Hopkinton at 14.16. Okay. And Medway at 14.25. The other thing is, if we took the largest split that we could do on this thing, okay, that would put us at 17.13, I think is what the largest split would be. That would still have us below average for all the communities that I've listed here. Okay, I'm not saying that we do that. What I'm saying is, with this that you're showing me, we're gonna have a $450 $458 increase. It's the largest increase historically that I see here for the mean household. Okay, and a 6% increase for our residential. If we're not gonna do this, when would we do it? I think that it's certainly, it's not gonna get us more money, although I will say that if you did take some of the burden off the residential, right, the next time you go for an override, maybe the residents would be more willing because they are the voters, right? Maybe they've been more willing. And I certainly don't want to be anti-business, but when you look at these other surrounding communities and you see how much lower our tax rate is, I don't think it's being anti-business to balance this out. So that's all I'm going to say. You guys can-
So I'm gonna go to the public now. Anybody else in the public? Because this is a public hearing. Joe? Name and address.
Hello there, Joe Halligan, One Newell Drive. Mr. Cormier, I appreciate your comments about across the street. It's the first time I get a comment out of you.
Could you pick that mic up a little?
But I appreciate that.
Can you pick the mic up?
Yes, I appreciate that. Some people are gonna ask, why am I here? And how does the split tax rate affect me? I have commercial and residential properties in town that I rent or lease out. My residential properties far exceed all of this property you see on 140. This is a windfall for me if this goes through. It's a lottery ticket because I'm gonna save a ton of money on all these homes. In good conscience, I can't take that money. I don't believe in the split tax rate. I'd like to see it the way it is, and I'll explain why. And I'm surprised a lot more landlords on here, but a lot of them are probably out of towners. They don't care because most commercial.
It's important that you speak to the mic.
Most commercial properties are all under a triple net lease. So any tax increase gets given right to the tenant. A lot of these tenants are all from Franklin. Some of them may be out of town, but a lot of them from in town because I know that for a fact. And what happens is the landlord just passes that tax. So there's no expense to the landlord. It's a windfall for him. It's a windfall for me because I'm gonna save a lot, hundreds of thousands in real estate taxes. So it's great, but I don't want that. I spent 18 months on the master plan committee. And the issue here we have in Franklin is we need more industrial commercial property. 100% of that tax revenue does not get spent on schools, infrastructure, they're self-contained. All that money goes directly to the residents. And I'll give you a little example. 140 here from Rentham to Lewis Street, down to Haywood Street. Just from Lewis to Haywood is town-owned. All the rest is state. All these tenants and these properties across the street pay a property tax to the town of Franklin. None of that is used to improve this road, the sidewalks, the sanding, the salting. So indirectly, there is a split tax rate because that money's going to feed the resident roads and infrastructure and improvements in schools. So there is mentally kind of a split tax rate because they're not using that, taking advantage of all that tax money. Another thing that most of you ran on was these huge housing projects and everything in Franklin. That was a big thing on the running of the council. Now you're going to award all these people that own these projects. Did you know that all the 40Bs, all the large multifamilies across the street, the Taj, the Wesley, all of them, do not come under commercial? They're residentially taxed. So now you're giving them a lottery ticket. They're hoping you pass this. They're gonna make more money. You think the rents are gonna go down? It's market rate. No one's gonna benefit from that. Just the landlords. And that's why a lot of landlords on here contesting this. Because they just pass that tax on. Again, being on the master plan, we definitely need more commercial. We're at like, and I think he had mentioned we're about 19-20% commercial residential property. Yeah. Acreage, not the use. It's only about 9.5% is actually being used and stood on and made money on. You take the wetlands out of it, you take roadways out of it, 9%. So now we're gonna shift all that tax burden on 9% of the property in town to make up the difference. That doesn't get utilized on infrastructure and stuff, because some of the industrial parks are all privately plowed. I would love to have a workshop before you guys make a decision, and I think it'd be a great thing for us all to get together and really get educated on boots on the ground and understand it. Google, internet, everybody, I heard this, I heard that, all sounds good. But the reality is, I'm the reality. I see what's happening, I feel it. And I think it would be beneficial to keep it at a regular rate for everybody, not a split tax rate. We are the 5th lowest tax rate around us. But you forget one thing. When a bank interest rates go down, the prices of the homes go up. If you want to believe in your Google and your internet, Google it. When you have a great school system, which we have the charter school, the new high school, and you have a low tax rate, the houses are in demand. Guess what happens? The prices of the houses go up. So it's a catch-22. You lower the tax rate, the houses, they sell for a higher value. It's well known. You can do your research on that. So please, again, I'm willing to contribute my share into that to keep it a non-split tax rate to help the community. The little people, like you said, the Rome and the small businesses. It's very expensive. I just watched Jamie here now talk about $100 million business we got here. How much profit are we making at the end of the year? It's not that hunky-dory out in the commercial world right now. And I can give you an example. I just bought a convenience store off the street. The electric bill a month is probably your average mortgage in town. It's very expensive to run a business, let alone trying to keep the help. That's even harder. The help is the hard part. They don't show up. Tuesday, after the football game, half my help never showed up. Okay, so it's very hard to run a business. And now we're gonna shift all this burden on these commercial guys. And the last thing I'll touch on is one thing that, again, a workshop would really go a long way. In the town of Franklin, you wanna build a commercial site, we're on the Charles River Watershed District. We gotta put hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars underground to maintain our drainage, filter out the phosphate, some of the towns you're talking about aren't on the Charles River. They can just pave their driveways, put a couple storm drains in, and put up a building and make money. We can't do that in Franklin. It's very, very expensive to build in Franklin. It's very tough to get through some boards. I don't have to tell you how hard it is for Glenn Farmer to get a sign put in front of his place that year.
Right.
Okay, so this, to shift the burden on commercial people, it's so hard right now for these people to even make it. A lot of people have more pride than money, and they just keep the businesses going because it's their business. And shifting that burden it would be a lot. And I don't think it was really advertised enough, other than the way we typically advertise, for all these commercial people to understand what's going on. Because typically, this goes through in a meeting, it hasn't been at a split rate ever, so people aren't too worried about it. Now that we're getting to that point, I think a workshop and more awareness would go a long way. And all I heard was, in this whole election, was transparency. To sneak something through like that would be a real burden on commercial properties. And I'd appreciate some thought put into it, and I would love to be involved in a workshop, and we can all get together, and I'm involved in it deeply, and I can answer a lot of questions you may not know. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, John.
Anybody else?
Tony DeSilva from 34 Cassandra. And again, I live in a over 55 community. It seems like tonight, all we've been talking about is how to increase revenue. And as our attorney pointed out, split tax rate, no split tax rate, we're not going to increase the revenue that way.
Right.
And if I look at what happened over the last 2 years, the town's voters are not big on increasing taxes. We had an override that failed. The previous board was a little tone deaf. They tried to do a second override, that failed. We just had an election where we lost most of our experienced counselors. There's a message here, folks. We've got to stop looking at the revenue side of the problem and look at the expense side of the problem. Let's figure out where we can cut some expenses, especially in the short term. We looked at Jamie's 5-year projection. It doesn't look good. Right? So let's look at cutting some expenses before we look at increasing taxes. We just heard that we can't really do that easily. It's not going to happen in the short term. So I urge you, most of you are new, I urge you, you ran on transparency, you ran on accountability, you said you were going to lower taxes. Let's take a look at figuring out, keep the taxes even, but figure out how to stop them from going up, at least in the short term, so you can get reelected and do some good. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else out there? How about anybody in Zoom land?
No.
You didn't see anybody?
No.
All right. You all set?
We'd like you to vote on those resolutions.
Who wants to vote on the resolutions right now?
Declare the hearing. You need to close the hearing, yeah.
I'm gonna declare the hearing done if you're done.
I'm done.
I declare the public hearing, the FY 26 classification hearing closed. Move to legislature for action.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I believe we're on resolution 25-76.
Tax classification residential factor. Clerk will read the resolution.
This is regarding tax classification residential factor, whereas a public hearing on the property tax classification was held and closed on December 3rd, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that the residential factor will be set at, and I believe we said 11.42?
No, one.
One.
It's the residential factor, not the tax rate.
Okay,
So it's
so
one.
residential one, just leave it at one.
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying. Now therefore be it resolved that the residential factor will be set at one.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? No discussion, majority vote.
I just,
Oh,
it's not
I'm sorry, I
discussion,
didn't
it's
see
it's
it.
just, it's just a comment, and I am laughing underneath, because 20 years ago, I was the one here pushing this split tax rate, and I cannot believe what I heard tonight from this group, and I'm the person that's kind of playing neutral. I understand where everyone's going, and we will talk about it in the
Later.
future, but I am
I was there with you.
correct. We were together.
That's right.
And we were on opposite sides of the equation.
Yeah.
And it's, I sit here 20 years later and I'm fascinated by how this conversation. That's all.
Things change, Mike.
It's just.
Majority vote matters, so all in favor? Opposed?
No.
Any opposed?
One opposed.
So the
Motion carries.
8 yes and 1 no.
Resolution 25-77, tax classification, open space exemption. Clerk will read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tax classification, open space exemption, whereas a public hearing on the property tax classification was held and closed on December 3rd, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that there not be an exemption for open space.
You heard the resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. Majority vote rules. All's in favor? Aye. Opposed? No
9
opposed.
0.
None. Motion passes. Resolution 25-78, tax classification, small business exemption.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tax classification, small business exemption, whereas a public hearing on the property tax classification was held and closed on December 3rd, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that there will not be an exemption for small businesses.
Have a motion?
Second.
Second. Discussion? Councilor Blank?
I don't know if we can get this answer, but if we were to actually have this, what would be the exemption amount be?
It's 10% of the property assessed value multiplied by the tax rate.
This
For
has,
those who qualify only.
okay, this has nothing to do with personal property,
Correct, it's only class 3 commercial.
just class 3 commercials. Would there have to be separate legislation for personal properties, for personal property exemptions?
One doesn't exist for personal property exemption. Although, no, actually,
there
we have a
does.
low value threshold, which we do, which was adopted many years ago. What's our value threshold? $1,000. So the first 1,000 of personal property is exempt from taxation, mainly because at a $11 tax rate, we send tax bills to collect revenue. It costs you money to send out an $11 annual tax bill. You know what I mean?
And that amount was set by the council under previous thing?
Would have
Okay,
been
so we'll
adopted
come-
many
we'll
years
come back.
ago,
When
right?
the state first offered the, suggested you could a local option.
Okay.
For, it's limited, the highest.
It's 10,000.
10,000.
Yes, 10,000. That's the reason why I asked the question, because I just didn't know if both of these things were intertwined, but we'll take that up under different things. I'm all set. Thank you.
You all set? Thank you, Councilor LeBlanc. So we have a motion and a second. Again, no discussion, so majority vote rules. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Opposed, motion passed.
So 9-0.
Resolution 25-79, tax classification, residential property exemption.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tax classification residential property exemption, whereas a public hearing on the property tax classification was held and closed on December 3rd, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that there will not be an exemption for residential properties.
Hear the motion. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion? Majority vote rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I vote present.
I don't even have that.
It's abstain.
Abstain? You
Abstain.
abstain. Motion passes 8-1.
One abstention.
Resolution 25-80, tax classification senior means tested exemption.
Second.
Yeah, me too.
Haven't even read it yet.
Me too, brother.
Tax classification senior means tested exemption. Whereas a public hearing on the property tax classification was held and closed on December 3rd, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved that there will not be an exemption for senior means tested.
Second. Discussion? Councilor Blank?
This was brought up last year. There's a lot of confusion as to what this meant.
Yes.
And I've looked at it. I don't think you've ever came back to answer this question. I will be voting against this because I do think that this is another avenue to offer seniors additional relief off their taxes. There's a whole bunch of other mechanisms. I reached out to the town of Concord, who has this. They had 30 people apply, all were accepted under their guidelines. It offered basically $4,000 per application.
Yeah.
So it's pretty significant. So I wish we had more about this. Many may vote yes for this to not offer it. I would prefer to offer it.
I would too.
I think there's more behind it, but
Let's have the discussion, Michael.
Mike, can we have a discussion?
we can, that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, we can.
So,
Chris, can you talk more to that? please?
Yes.
yes, so
Please.
my understanding is that for someone to qualify for this, they have to apply for the Massachusetts Senior Circuit Breaker. And the maximum on that is $2,700 currently, and that we can offer a percentage of that. So I'm not sure where the $4,000 came from.
So I went and looked at who's offering a senior means, to the state website. And I reached out to the town of Concord, reached out to the assessor's office and asked them that question. Because I wanted to know how many people participate. You can go to their website. They do give the criteria to qualify. It talks about income. It talks about what the residents have, the value of the residents cannot exceed. But the master assets are, there's a whole bunch of things to your point that they have to fill out. I think we need to learn more about it.
So I'm doing math in my head. I think where they're getting the $4,000 is the $2,700 from the senior circuit breaker. And you could get normally 50% would be $1,300. That's where they're getting the $4,000.
It could be, all I know, I've asked the question, how many people applied last year? And they said between the period, they had 30 people apply, all met the criteria. And it gave them they gave those 30 people $110,000 tax break. That's 110,000. So that's about 3,600, 37. What the components are, I don't know. They offered it. I guess my point is it's a mechanism. It's another mechanism to offer tax relief to seniors. That's all. Now, again, We all know this. It was brought up before. You take it, you're gonna take it from here, you're gonna push it to there. So it's just gonna shift. It's gonna, that 110,000 is gonna get shifted. I'm gonna pick up my 2 cents is gonna get picked up. My bill, instead of $12,450 is gonna be $12,452. Yes, I'm gonna pay a portion of that. I'm just saying, I don't think we know everything, but just saying no to it tonight.
I know.
If we say yes, they can go figure out how to get it accomplished, and it's just another avenue to offer a tax break to seniors. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to Chris. Just because it is a pretty important topic, I'd like to spend a couple minutes on it. Are there cons to this?
So when people apply for this, it affects the tax rate. So it would be a burden on the assessor's office by a lot. There's however many people apply, everything would need to be verified, and it would hold up the process of setting the tax rate. And if I understand it correctly, I'll give an example. Say your income is $40,000 a year and your tax bill is $6,700. So you get the senior circuit breaker of $2,700. And if we agreed we're going to give a 50% of that, you get another $1,350. Well, that $1,350 comes off what you paid for taxes the next year. So now your senior circuit breaker is going to be less by that number. And then you're going to get a lower tax savings on the senior means tested exemption. So it's on the first go round, yeah, it's pretty good. But on the second year, you're going to lose out, maybe break even. The third year, you'd lose. It's a lot of work for shifting the burden. I'm not sure it's the best choice here.
But it's our senior population that speaks the loudest as to not being able to afford the residential taxes on their homes.
Yes, but that they still may not qualify for it.
What's the qualification? Yeah, come to me. What is the qualification?
My understanding is you have to qualify for the senior circuit breaker, Massachusetts Department of Revenue senior circuit breaker, which I don't know all the
details.
criteria.
Yeah.
So there's a certain max on what your property can be assessed at, and your real estate taxes have to be more than 10% of your income.
In this particular one.
Thing, so we have to set the tax rate tonight, so we can't table this. So, we can't table.
Yeah.
Okay, can we find out what if we said yes to it? Because it has to come.
Well, that's what
Right.
That's what he's
So
trying to say.
I'm pretty confident in this, that you really don't have a choice tonight, because this would have to all have been people.
No, we do, yeah, right.
That the people that would be able to do it would have to apply, would have had to have already applied.
I disagree with that. Mr. Chairman, I disagree with that.
Oh, if you have.
Only because the town of Concord's, the period was set for this year was set earlier in the year. So they had already set their tax rate back in December of 2024, but everyone's application didn't have to come in until early this year. So this is an application process. I don't know how it affects the tax rate tonight, but I'll be honest, I mean, this is another example, and I was gonna ask the question, I didn't ask it. We said we had to vote tonight. When's the first day we can do this? This really shouldn't be a decision that a council that's 3 weeks in has to make. It should be done by the prior council. So whatever we need to do going forward to get this done before an election, this should be done before an election. This really should be done. This is not something a 3-week council, whether it's new or old, should be voting on. But to me, what I'm irritated about, this was brought up last year, it was never addressed. And now we're here tonight saying we have to vote this. This is the stuff that irritates me. And again, I will vote no to this resolution. I don't care what the heck it means, because if it's work we should have done, we should have done it, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, can we revisit this? Is this one piece so critical to the overall tax rate? Can we revisit this in 6 months? I mean, to Mike's point, I agree 100%. Like I said, we're here 3 weeks. How do we do that?
Mark would know more than anybody.
you're coming down a deadline. There's a whole bunch of balls in the air that all come into place within a narrow range, which forces a situation in every municipality within a couple of weeks of one another. They're having the hearings. I was in Medfield last night. They had the hearing last night, voted it without any controversy. That being said, I think if you want to have workshops, if you want to have discussions, anticipating what you're going to do for the following year, but the consequences would be the Department of Revenue is a tremendous resource. If you can't find the information online, you can find people to talk to who will confirm. There are some communities out there that have special legislation. I don't know that Concord is, but they have special legislation that allows them to give preferential treatment to different groups, including seniors. So whether it's putting this in place or that or whatever, and you're absolutely correct. If all you're doing is a closed system, as I indicated earlier, you are pushing that amount, whatever it happens to be, onto the other taxpayers. So my recommendation would be, if anything, study it and be prepared to address it intelligently and informed next year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As someone who brought this issue up originally past several years, I've listened to the assessor's office, and I do understand that their capacity is very limited right now. And so I hear their concerns. I think that, I'm hoping if we could continue to look at the personal property issue, we might be able to beef up the assessor's office or something. There's room to expand their assessor's office to sort of work on some of these issues. Maybe that's something we can, have the capacity to do in the future. But right now, I don't know if that's something that, I hear that people are affected by this issue, but I don't know if we have the capacity they have the capacity as an office to deal with it. And that's in the back of my head. And what, especially with, I mentioned the residential issue, and they'd have to upgrade their software, they'd have to hire a part-time. Let me just ask you, how much staff or hours or money would you need to implement either this change going forward? Like how much extra people?
So that would be hard to answer because we don't know how many people would apply.
Okay.
Right.
And so, and regardless of how many people would qualify, you don't know how many people would apply. So I can't answer that. But as an example, if you tried to implement the residential exemption, there's 9,500 residential properties in Franklin, and they would each have to apply every year to qualify. They would have to, all that information for all those applications would have to be verified and entered every year. That would be at least one full-time person or more.
So I think right now, we still have this, there's like 43, is it 43? What's the clause? What's the one that's already in place? 41C. I think maybe what we can do now is, we only have 19 people who have taken advantage of that. Maybe we can focus on trying to get more people to sign up first. And then if that goes well, maybe we could look at expanding it. But as someone who's pushed for this and cares about this issue, I think that this might not be the best time to do it. Maybe we can schedule a time in October or put it on the agenda in October to go have like a pre-tax rate hearing before we actually vote on it, and have the legislation on a later day. So we don't have to worry about, and we don't have an election this upcoming year, so we don't have to worry about it being a different council. So maybe that would make sense in the future. So
We do the workshop with the tax rate, we can do it all together. You know what I mean, Matt? We could probably do it all together.
Mr. Chairman, I know that Jamie had alluded in previous presentations that we're going to be doing some workshops at the senior center with the upcoming lottery for Franklin Ridge. Maybe it makes sense to lump this conversation into just sort of a broader tax conversation for senior residents, so that if they are going to make the decision to sell their home and try to get a lottery spot for our limited senior affordable housing slots, this seems very relevant to that entire conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. We can do that. I mean, I just want to note that the assessors go down to the senior center few times to talk to the veterans groups about their exemptions, to talk to seniors about theirs. They walk people through the application process if they need help. I just want everyone that's new to know, it's not like we're not doing outreach. It's not like we don't know Kevin's office does outreach to all the people that were on the various exemptions from last year. Like, so it's not like we're not doing anything. I know some of you know, but we do quite a bit of outreach to people. Some people aren't eligible. Some people don't apply. You know, sometimes it's just the way it is. You can only do so much to get everybody kind of put in. And I would also mention, through Mr. Chair, I sent it to Max. This is a little bit off topic, but right on topic. If you guys are looking to do something, truly not just on this exemption, two of you and the previous council endorsed the Municipal Empowerment Act, which has a provision, and I'm going to read it to you this bill will allow cities and towns to adopt a new senior means tested property tax exemption for qualifying seniors and to increase existing senior property tax exemptions called the clause exemptions. Y'all wrote a letter 9-0 to Jeff and Becca, and I know we're all friends, but it's very frustrating to be here 2 years later, and I empathize with Councilor LeBlanc's irritation on this. But here's a piece of legislation that our representatives have not responded to us at all on.
No, we wrote that letter. Yeah.
I've talked to them personally. I've met with them. I know that both of you have.
I have.
We've talked about it at the senior center. Can't get a stance out of anybody on this, which is like the layup of layups. And this has been languishing on Beacon Hill for not one, not two, but now in 2026 will be the third year. I mean, if we're all serious about doing something for seniors, which I agree we all are, you know, we're making this a lot harder than just getting something like this through the legislature, which should be a unanimous vote, 200-0. And this is frustrating. I think we have to talk to our representatives about this stuff because this law could actually set a new foundation for the community to do exactly what I think all of you were trying to do.
There's a lot of other more beneficial legislation in that package, including removing the need to vote the PEG appropriation.
Well, amen. Oh my God, Mark. Amen to that.
Let's get this done.
Okay. Well, that's
All right.
I know.
All right, so everything is no more discussion, so we'll call a vote.
Mr. Chairman, could we, before we go on, just ask the team again, if we didn't approve this, what is the impact on your office?
We don't know.
I don't think we'll be able to submit to the Department of Revenue in.
When do you have to submit? Like next week, is it? Tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow.
Tonight?
And just again, and sorry to interrupt.
By law, the third quarter tax bills with the tax rate have to be in the mail by December 31st. So
you got 3
so while
weeks.
we're in December, it has to go to the printer, it has to be going through. the
So we have
billing
no
cycle.
runway.
It's a process.
You can't, okay, that's what I was saying
It would
before.
be-
Do we have to do this tonight? And the answer was yes. And I expressed the same kind of frustration that Mike said earlier, that this is not
agree
right.
with Mike.
That's,
I mean,
okay, got it. Thank you.
It seems clear that we all want this,
Yes.
but also recognize that it'd be difficult to enact it right now. So it should be part of the plan.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
All right, so-
Can I just say one thing real quick? No offense to any of you. I do agree with you 100% with the frustration. I feel blindsided, not by you specifically. Giving all this information and it has to be done because it has to be submitted by tomorrow. So it's really like we get the information, but we don't really have the information to really do an informed vote. I will vote to pass it because time restraints needs to be, but I want something put together so we can do a full-on exploration. And Jamie, could you please forward me that little initiative that the previous council signed? Because I think I'm gonna have a phone call with Roy.
You got it.
Thank you, Jane.
I'll send the letter to everybody.
Yeah, send the letter to everybody. I think I still have it. All right, all in favor? Aye. Any noes?
No.
One.
So 8-1.
So this is our favorite. Resolution 25, I think you're good, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
You can leave. Resolution 25-81, cable funds to support tech service and programming per Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and 3/4. Clerk will read the resolution.
Can I motion to waive my own reading?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna motion to waive the
Oh,
reading.
great.
Go ahead, motion it.
I believe we have a motion to waive the reading.
Motion to waive the
Second.
A second.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Oh, no, that's the way to waive the reading.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
now it does. Motion passed to waive the reading. Now, somebody has to read the resolution. That's what I used to do. Move resolution 25-81. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor? I don't have to read it.
You don't have to read it, but we have to have a discussion. So. Do we have a
Anybody
discussion?
have any questions? on
I
what
just want to say, I wanted to,
And we watched this happen too.
I was talking to Town Administrator Helen earlier before the meeting about how what a great job the Public Access Studio does in covering these meetings, and that how in our survey that went out to the entire town, how it was one of the highest, how we rate a lot, much higher compared to other towns in terms of how our meetings are covered. So it's a great resource, and I think that we should do all we can to support them. So thank you.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That's
Opposed?
9-0.
Was there any?
No, there's no opposes.
We get them on.
Town administrator report.
Yeah, couple of things really quick, just a heads up for your last meeting in December. Just a couple of things that are gonna be on the agenda to give you a kind of a heads up. One will be annual license renewals for all of the liquor establishments, common vitular, junk dealers, class 1, class 2, all that stuff. Brutus and Carlos will be in to make a snow presentation. We haven't done those in a few years because we had the same group of folks, but with a new group of folks. Hearing from them about our snow operations is something we usually do every 2 or 3 years, but this is a perfect time to do it. At Councilor Malloy's request, we're gonna do the social equity policy from the Cannabis Control Commission. We're gonna do, I looked it up today, it was a 4-slide presentation that Mark and I did on town charters. Also, Councilor Marangelo had asked for an agenda item with why the town was headed in the wrong direction. So at least we're trying to clean up a bunch of the stuff that folks have asked for, I think by the end of the calendar year. And then, as I mentioned, in January, you'll get at least at a minimum, a very extensive presentation on public facilities, including schools, and on public infrastructure at some point in January as well. So it's a little bit of the island of misfit toys kind of meeting in December. It's kind of some random stuff that doesn't really all connect, but at least there won't be anything finance related for one meeting. So other than that, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mark?
Yeah, I just want to give you a heads up. As far as the ABCC, Alcohol Beverage Control Commission is concerned,
Oh, my
the
favorite.
license renewals are strictly a ministerial act. If you've got some issue with a particular establishment, it has to be treated separately with a public hearing.
Okay.
So the only real issue that's coming up with, that you'd be entitled to take into account would be outstanding fees or failed inspections. And generally, we hold up the license at the very least in those situations.
Yeah. Okay. That's the subcommittee work reports. I don't think we have any. Did we? We don't have any subcommittees yet. The police station committee, when do we have the next meeting?
It's tentatively for January 6th. We're waiting on a
January
couple.
6th?
Yeah, January 6th. So there's a couple more confirmations.
That's the only one I know of right now.
That's right.
All right, so, Council Malloy, future agenda items?
I think we just touched base on some of them. I still want to revisit 40B policy, friendly 40B policy from last council's debate. I'd like to resurface that at some point.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, I think the conversation around split tax rate didn't start from his email. I know that's been back and forth for a while. But it is still worth having kind of a pros cons workshop potentially as part of the joint budget subcommittee, assuming we're gonna do something along those lines again. But I'd love to see that on the agenda in addition to the senior exemption discussion that we started
We'll
talking
just
about
put
today.
that all together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it might be an idea to have sessions dedicated to some of these things that kind of group well together.
Councilor Griffin?
Okay, forgive me, I have a couple. So first of all, I would like to discuss the MBTA land swap with the Children's Museum to see what it is we can do to push that forward. I mean, I know there was enthusiasm for it on both sides, and I would like to see how we can make that happen. If Jamie looks like you're thinking there's nothing we can do.
No,
but-
yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it on the 17th.
Okay.
I'll put it on under TA report and I'll give you the lay of the land of what this is gonna take, because I've got a good idea. There is really nothing you guys can do. I know they're urgent, but it is not gonna happen for this winter. There's no way that this is gonna happen to help them within the next 6 to 12 months. This is a very complicated land swap. And it may even take special legislation. So I'll be happy to give a thorough update on the 17th.
Okay, thank you. And then for very, very future agenda items, I think this tax conversation that we had tonight should be starting maybe next September instead of December. I think we all kind of felt that this was the 11th hour, maybe the 11th and 3/4 hour to be having this conversation. And, to Councilor LeBlanc's point, like we were very new and thrown into this, and it was lots of questions that I feel like should have been had earlier. So I would like to see this conversation starting a couple months before September, October, so that we can have a decision made in December that reflects the conversations, that we know the answers to these things. We've already had the discussion. And then my last agenda item was, Chairman just kind of touched on this. We don't have subcommittees yet, and I know that, okay. So that was my next question, is when that was going to be discussed. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Blank.
When do we plan on doing our goals?
When do we do that? January, right?
So we usually do it the first meeting in January.
Yeah.
Usually do it the first, we gotta have a conversation in January about how you wanna do those.
Yeah.
Okay. But I always thought it was January.
And I know that I feel bad saying this, but bandwidth is at an all-time low. Morale is pretty far down. We need to have some realistic expectations of what goals are gonna be.
Yeah.
There's a possibility, I've worked with the superintendent already. We've met with some consultants on possibly a third party coming in and doing a strategic plan, a 5-year, 2030. Superintendent's fully on board. I think we've been trying to talk to maybe between the two chairs, maybe this month, about how to do that, and maybe have somebody else come in and start a little bit more basic about what you want to get out of the town instead of just jumping into things to do. But that's a conversation we should have with the council too. And I think that Lucas is probably going to have with the school committee at some point, just about how to frame what's achievable, what can be done, and what can be done sustainably. So.
Okay. We're gonna.
Because usually I just do a list based on a lot of people. You guys offer feedback, add, subtract. But I think we just went through a system where the goals were not fundable. We took 5, 6, 7 of them off the list. Those will never get back on the list because they're just not financially feasible. So I think we're pretty limited in that. And I think given some of the other issues we've seen about civility and about anger and taxes and development, and we have a whole master plan that just got passed. Are we going to do any of that? I think there's a lot of bigger questions than just goals. So I think you got to have a pretty heavy plate right around the corner already. So,
come June.
But I think those are a decision whether you guys want to just do the goals yourself or whether you want to have somebody help coach both the council and the school committee to try to figure out if there's unified goals in that. So that's a bigger question. And I know that's a little more information than you thought, but when he asked about goals, we were going to.
Yeah, I guess that was my point is it this council's intent? I'm not saying, was it to do it in a public hearing or was it to have a workshop separate from this to?
Well, that's what we're
To
gonna.
talk about that, tie it into the master plan, all that stuff, look at what's been laid out there. Again, is doing this with my company right now. It's end of the year, it's 2020. What is the goals for 2026? The sooner that we do it, the sooner that we have our marching.
Well, that's what
orders. And I just think that should not be done in a council meeting. Council meetings are restrictive in how we can talk versus a workshop where it's more free flowing, yada, yada, yada. And I think personally, between the 9 of us, we're all adults, we can record it, do whatever we need to do, but
Oh, yeah, whatever.
we don't,
We're not gonna do anything.
we can talk amongst our, and then a group and come out with our goals. That's all. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the strategic planning concept as well as maybe if it, I don't, how packed our meeting is going to be in just the next meeting in terms of at least talking about how I want the goal process to be, so we have it ready to go for the new year. Everything is, and I know, we talk a lot about morale being low in terms of employees in town. And I noticed we've never had a friendly conversation with our HR director about just morale and, what's turnover like, what can we do to support a more equitable.
So you want a future agenda item talking to the.
HR director, yeah.
Okay, that's
all you
good.
need.
That's all I need. Okay, so, Jane.
Nothing at this time because Counselor Okuju and Griffith stole mine.
Just helped you out.
Council Conway Ledger.
I'm stunned that Councilor Kellaway tripped. That's not gonna say. I just need a moment.
Relish in the moment. It doesn't happen that often.
No. It's nice to have her on this side of the table. Which leads me to my point, Mr. Chairman. I'd like us to examine as a future agenda item, moving public comments to later in the agenda. I know we've talked about this at many council meetings. School committee shifted it. Many councils have shifted it. Previous council was reluctant to do it. It makes more sense given our early start time with working families and people not maybe being able to get here at 6. If they had something on their mind or something they wanted to talk about. But also it allows us the ability to respond in fairly quick time, right? If somebody mentions something, let's say after subcommittee reports, if we went to public comments, then you're only talking a few minutes, maybe a half hour before we are responding. The way it is now, if somebody brings something up at 7:05.
You forget about it.
And by the time we get to it, it's 11:30 and everybody's exhausted. They're not even watching at home anymore. And the thing just sort of gets glossed over or forgotten about. So I think it helps us in many ways to shift that. Yes, people would have to maybe sit through the whole meeting. Isn't that a good thing to be engaged, right? But I'd like us to look at that as soon as we could. And also maybe, Mr. Chairman, look at a hard stop time for our meetings. We've talked about that before, about like, they shouldn't just go on forever. Like if we knew like 10 o'clock it was gonna stop, and if we didn't get to something, it gets brought to the next meeting. But there has to be a limit to the amount that we as volunteers can put into a meeting before we just get exhausted or checked out, or when staff want to get home as well. So I think looking at that at some point, I would say 10 PM, because that's a 4-hour meeting already. But yeah.
Council comments.
Future agenda items. I want them talked about in the future. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Council Vice Chair.
Vice Chair, just one thing, I'd like to get to the discussion of how we work with the school committee, get presented to.
Well, I'll kind of address that just
Okay.
now.
All right,
So-
so go ahead.
So me and Jamie have been talking, and Lucas and Paul Griffin, so I'm gonna sit down with them after the first of the year. We're gonna try to bring the council and the school committees together, so we can, get workshops going. I'm gonna pick their brain, they're gonna pick our brain, so if you guys want me to bring something up, that way we won't all be in the room together, then we could just, we'll pick the brains up. So we've been talking about that for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So that should work. So we're at council comments. Council Malloy.
Mike mentioned something about workshops, and I guess I'm terrified given our initial training on public meeting laws and what we can do, and I'm afraid to send an email to more than one person. Can we have workshops? What is that? What rules are involved in what we can do? Because we've got a lot of important work to do, and it's really hard for me to think that we're just going to do this,
I get it.
one-off.
Mark would be the best
So
person.
workshops are an exception to the open meeting law requirement. That being said, there's still a prohibition on deliberating, so it all depends on what it is you intend to do with the workshop. If you're talking like with the goals, so you're gonna have a specific concrete result, I would not think that's eligible for I would think that would have to be posted open meeting. But a workshop, like if you wanted to get into some more detail on the open meeting law, or public records, a conflict or something like that, a general training for how the assessors work, or just some educational type thing, that's permissible.
Well, just to the point around budget, because we're all concerned about where and how and when we start this, what are we going to do? I mean, if the 9 of us got together, I bought pizza or something, and we said, what are our ideas around how we're going to attack the budget issues? How are we going to do that? Is that?
I don't think we can.
You can do that as long as we post the meeting and there's a date for it.
So
That's all.
that's still a public meeting. Okay.
It's like the listening sessions we did last year. We posted all of them, but not everybody showed up because they weren't mandatory. We did whatever 6 of them, and so we just posted them. Senior center office hours, we just post them to be legal, but oftentimes there isn't a quorum. So we could, if we want to do a pizza party, at noon on a Saturday, like seriously, or whatever, you could do that. But, again, then you're getting into how much, I mean, that's a lot of time, right? Like, I think that's where the balance is. I mean, I think that's where the balance is. So if there's 10 workshops folks want, that's a whole nother 10 meetings. If assessors, development, senior means exemptions, budget, I mean, you're starting to, but if you have a couple, might be more manageable. Or we just use the time. I think this is also part of I've said this to all of you. You're already down 3 meetings. You got 23 more the rest of the year. You got about 80 hours of deliberative debate. I think being judicious about what we try to do is probably going to be a key element in the next couple months, right? Because if we just do everything that everybody asks to do, you're going to cave in just like the last guys did. You got to really prioritize exactly what you want to get done. Thank you.
All set. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, sorry, once again, I got a couple things. Okay, so earlier there, when we were talking about the budget, one of the things that came up was that there seems to be a focus on optics right now, whether it's, the town side versus the municipal side, school side, and that was, a waste of time to be focusing on when we need to be focusing on the kind of the bottom line. And I just wanted to say that I disagree, because I believe that one of the main issues here in town is that we have created this divide that is unnecessary between the municipal side and the school side. The letter that was brought up today to show that, the school's budget was at 2.5%. When you take out the healthcare expenses, that just like every municipal department doesn't have it in their budget, and they're right around 2.5. The idea then is like, listen, there isn't a school side versus a town side. Franklin is one town, and we really need to be focused on, that the idea of that rising tide lifts all boats. Like, the whole town needs to be, it's not one side or the other. We all need to work together to kind of, to get this ship righted. And, on that point, I've just lost what I was going to say, but anyway, so there's that. And then I also wanted to say that we mentioned the senior center. You just mentioned the senior center office hours. Last meeting, we voted on the calendar, and I know people specifically said, I can't remember who it was, but we specifically said, okay, we're not voting on the office hours, right? I'm like, no, just voting on the calendar for the town meetings.
town council meetings. So then the office hours were posted, and I realized that we never had a chance to discuss that because we said we're not voting on that, and then they just were posted. I would like to see office hours change so that they're not 9 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. Thursdays at the senior center every month, because that makes it very difficult for specific council members to attend. It makes it very difficult for specific town residents to attend. If we can vary the location, vary the day, vary the time, then we might be able to get more people involved in that. So that was something that I felt like we missed that opportunity at our last meeting. I'd like to see at least having a discussion or what we can do to kind of vary that. And the last thing I wanted to say was that last meeting, we had a really, big kind of debate thrown in our laps, kind of right there at our second meeting. And I just wanted to say that I'm very proud of this council and every member, like regardless of how they voted or if they voted. We had an abutter who had to step out, and then we had a resident who's a neighbor but not an abutter, and he reached out to find out what was the ethical responsibility. And then, okay, he wasn't required to step out, but he still chose to recuse himself.
Oh, no, they made me step out.
Okay, well, I'm trying to give you the credit here, but I'm proud of you for doing that.
He had no choice.
As council members, we are required to, come into a meeting, into a debate, into a public hearing without having our minds made up already. We all agreed to that. That's part of our charter. And I was really pleased to see that people were willing to kind of have those questions in the back and forth and, listen to new evidence. We had new things that were brought up to us that day. And then we were, able to debate that. And I am really pleased that everyone voted their conscience, whether, we were elected because we have different ideas. We don't all think the same. We all have different priorities. I know that we're looking at things from different angles. And, we had one counselor who voted separately, and I'm actually really pleased because I know that Councilor Morangella was focused on the budget and making sure that this town stays, financially responsible. And he, I think that was a concern we all had, and he voted, I think, very responsibly. It wasn't the same way that I voted, but I'm really proud of him for voting that way. I'm just really proud of this council in general. And I've been, disappointed to see that people are saying things against that online. And I just think that it's worth all of us recognizing that we have different ideas, but we're all, here to better the town and better the lives of everyone in it. So I just want to say that.
Gotta get used to that. People aren't gonna like you for a long time.
Especially online.
Councilor LeBlanc.
The only comment I want to say is, again, I want to thank the staff for sitting there for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Not many of them are here to talk. They sat there. I don't know what you tell them, Jamie, but I want to thank them. Some are still here. I want to thank them for.
Easy to change.
Maybe your chain, right? Your chains will be let loose. But I want to, again, thank you guys for, unfortunately, it's not being recorded, so you won't hear this, but you'll read it in the minutes that I thank you for being here. So that's it.
Why do you think I wanted to come up here? Okay.
Councilman Angelo, yeah?
Yes. I just want to hit back. I didn't know if one of the comments one of the councilors made earlier was about the rules of the meeting and when we have the citizens' comments and the time for the meeting. I do know we have Councilor Malloy, who is our liaison to the town administrator, to work on some of the rules, and I think that would be a great fit for some of those rule questions. And I'd like to acknowledge I went to a ribbon cutting at Saks Jewelers, and it was an amazing space, a great new business. They're going to make a great addition to our Franklin community, and so I just want to give a shout out to them, and continue to give a shout out to all our our employees in Franklin who are working hard and doing what they can to make our lives a little better. So with that, I hope everyone's going to enjoy the holiday season, and we'll still have one more meeting to go before things really kick into high gear. And I just want to thank all of you for for supporting me. I had a rough meeting last meeting, and I appreciate everyone who came to my,
You're
who
great.
gave me a little love in terms of,
We'll always give you love.
so I appreciate it. I needed it, and but I'm glad to be back in action, and I'll leave it over to you.
Well, I forgot what I was gonna say, believe it or not. I guess it's getting late. No. I wanted to, a couple things. I do want to make sure somebody gets back to Brian about the property tax bills. And he's looking for the breakdown and the formula. That's all he's looking for. I know it's probably a lot more complicated than what I just said, but there's gotta be something that so he can do it. And honestly, he's not the first person that I've heard that from. So it wouldn't actually be a bad idea if we could somehow at some point break down our tax bills and exactly what percentage is based on our actual property and what is based on the other things, because that's a lot of dynamics. There was a lot of stuff that was talked about even through the last two overrides. There's a lot of confusion on all of this. So I think it would be a good thing to maybe bring that up and somehow clear it up. I think as far as goals go, and we're not there yet, but I think our first and primary goal is gaining the trust of the residents, because that's what's been lost. And without that, it does not matter what we do here or what anybody does here, if they sit here last year, next year, or 3 years from now. If the residents don't trust us, we can just close the doors and go home and just like hope the town survives, because that's basically what's gonna happen. So we need to start bringing out all the things that they're questioning and get those answers as clear. And I'm gonna be the first one to say, talk to me like I'm a kindergartner. I don't want all those legal mumbo jumbo words. They mean nothing to me. Speak in English, break it down, make it simple. That's what they need. That's what they're looking for. And that's what I'm looking for. But on a bright note, even though it rained on Sunday, I went to the lighting of the Common to see Santa and all the kids and all the wonderful kids that decided they were gonna play karaoke. And it was funny, and loved watching them all. We all got soaking wet. It was a great night. It was a tradition that it was, for me, remembering, because I used to do that with my kids. So now I did it with my kids and their kids. So we'll see if maybe we'll remember to go next year. And that is it.
Council Cormier Legend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is great to be at my first actual meeting with all of you and
I was gonna say
not
that.
calling in remotely from another country. Although I enjoyed the last meeting till 3 a.m. I was disappointed that I got booted off and couldn't participate further, but it's great to be back. I wanted to say thank you to our Franklin Fire Department and our Franklin Police Department for participating in the Unified Basketball Tournament last week. The gymnasium at the high school was packed. There was hundreds and hundreds of kids and families, and the spirit was fantastic. And just watching all of the men and women go up and down the court with those kids was pretty special. I want to remind everybody that, yes, it was Giving Tuesday yesterday, but that does not mean that your giving to local charities has to stop. There are plenty of charitable organizations from the Safe Coalition, FPAC, the YMCA, the Franklin Food Pantry, all still in need of support. But also, people may not be aware that many of our town departments have funds that they oversee that they can accept donations. So the Senior Center and Veteran Services are the two that come to mind most. But if you are so inclined, maybe you're thinking about your taxes and you want to make a year-end gift. But those entities within our town would greatly appreciate the support from everybody. And I would echo Councilor Callaway Tripp's point that whatever we can do, Jamie, in support of Mr. Young's request, maybe it's not in full, maybe it's we have to do this in steps over a number of years, but any little steps to make the bill a little bit easier you know, I consider myself a fairly intelligent guy, and sometimes I can't figure out my tax bill. I certainly can't figure out my water and sewer. I'm like, I think we must have leaks based on the amount of water that we're apparently consuming as a family of four. But
2 boys.
you know, I guess it must be, you know, having 2 kids, or I water my grass too much. I don't know. But whatever we can do to help him without putting too much of a burden on the staff, Jamie, would be greatly appreciated. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First one, you know, I think we have to do a better job of getting in front of these items. Councilor Blanket said before, you know, these things come onto the table and then we have to vote on them and we really haven't had a chance to kind of digest them. And my second point is just, you know, going back to the split tax rate, I, you know, heard from some of the folks saying, you know, look, I'm not looking to hammer businesses out there, okay? The fact is that even with the tax rate going down, for residential folks, it's going up 6% just because the property values is going up. They're gonna pay 6% more. Commercial's gonna pay less. That's just what this page said to me. So when I see that, I'm trying to solve a problem. I think as we go through this, you know, if we don't want this to be Groundhog Day, and we want to, you know, we have to start doing things differently. We're going to think about doing something different, and it's not always just the same old thing. Have to look at what the impact is, and maybe, you know, if we did adopt the split tax rate down the road, you know, residents would be more willing to, you know, to take it on. Matter of fact, you could, you know, I mean, if they saw a little bit of decrease, then when you did do the override, you know, it would balance out and they wouldn't see as big a burden on their tax bill. That's just my thoughts, you know, and I guess we'll take it up next year, but hopefully sooner than the meeting before. That's it for me.
I kind of agree with you, Gene. I think, you know, I think Joe Halligan kind of hit the nail on the head that, you know, if we're going to do this, I think, you know, we definitely should do a workshop, make everything transparent, so we're not throwing something at the president, says, you know, these guys are doing the same thing that the other councils do. So we do the workshop and we throw in the senior thing and we do everything like that. We have a couple workshops, get the word out, and then we can go from there. I think that's the smart way, I believe, anyway. So with that, I don't really have any, you guys covered everything. I don't have to really cover anything. We have no executive session. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Non-debatable. So, yeah.